Hello, good morning, and welcome to the AM show. It's another beautiful day, a beautiful Monday, the 22nd day of May 2023. By His grace, we've gathered again, and so we give thanks to Him. Like I always say, once you're about stepping out, step out with that confidence that you know God will always be with you, and therefore you are a winner, you're not a loser. As the Bible, the Word of God says, a man is who he thinketh he is. So who would you rather think you are? A winner or a loser? So today, I would rather want you to choose that you are a winner. And look, everything will fall in places for you. Trust that God will be with you, and I know He will. And I'm grateful that we're going to share it today together. This is the AM show. My name is Samuel Kojo Braze. On behalf of the team, welcome. Now, what do we have to serve you today? We'll bring you the news review, where we'll be joined by the Executive Director of the Media Foundation for West Africa, Suleiman Abrahima, being our guest this morning for us to review what the papers will be reporting today. Also, we'll move on to bring you the big stories, where government has confirmed the receipt of $600 million as first tranche of an extended credit facility from the IMF. Though this may bring some relief to government, Ghanaians may have to brace themselves for tough times ahead. This morning on the AM show, we are counting the cost of an IMF deal and what to expect. Our guest for this morning, Dr. Tiah Mahama, is from the Office of the Vice President. He'll be joining us from the government with the government perspective. Dr. Said Idrisu is an economist, and he'll be joining us from the United States. Dr. Kofi Klucheson is an industrialist. So from the industrialist point of view, what does this really bring to the table? Dr. Richmond Tiah is a banking consultant. We know that this will obviously have an impact on the banking sector. The statement, the document from the IMF has really affirmed this. What really is there for us to look forward to? We'll be dealing with all of that. Also on the show, the colleges of education in Ghana have undergone significant transformation since their establishment under the 2012 Act, that's Act 847. Our checks, however, reveal that there are infrastructure deficits in almost all the colleges of education in Ghana. Most of these structures are more than 60 years old. Why do we have that? How do we overcome it? Now, at the Baga College of Education, a 400-bed capacity ladies hostel has been abandoned for more than a decade. Why? At the Agroecology College of Education, work on a 300-bed hostel facility has stopped since 2015. At NGA College of Education in Wa, a 3-story building hostel has been left to rot away, with the building caving in from the second floor. Why that? Today we tackle these with Professor Mohammed Salifu, Director General of the Ghana Tertiary Education Commission, Larry Agbado, he is editor, Teacher Education Journal, and Dr. Peter Anti is Executive Director for the Institute for Education Studies, IFS. Also joining us on that conversation will be Professor Samuel Atitono, National President of Preeclampsia. We'll be having a beautiful chat on that, finding the way out of this particular predicament. And then we'll talk about preeclampsia. It's a pregnancy complication characterized by high blood pressure. The largest gathering of experts, policymakers, researchers, clinicians, and scientists, and all health practitioners involved in the care of pregnant women at risk of HDP in Ghana and the South region is happening this week. More details when Dr. Emmanuel Strofenyo, Medical Director, Greater Accra Regional Hospital, joins us on the show. Koi Labi is Executive Director and Founder of Action on Preeclampsia Ghana. They will be joining us for us to have a conversation on that. Also, so we'll be talking about preeclampsia on that. And Wikimedians of Chi language community is a young not-for-profit organization made up of a dedicated group of open advocates who work hand in hand with Wikimedia Foundation to increase the presence of information about Africa on the internet in Twi and English language. We would have a chat with them for us to understand more of what they do. Later on the show, you would have the chance to join us with your views via phone and on social media. And that's how our show is planned for you this morning. Welcome aboard. On behalf of the team, I'm only representing the team this morning, led by Kingsley and Sam. On behalf of the whole team, I welcome you to the show. Once again, grateful that you chose us Good morning and do enjoy our show. So let's start with the AM news, and to our first story. Shop owners at Circle or Donna are counting their losses to the tune of thousands of cedis as 50 shops have been razed down by fire, which took the fire service more than 3 hours to tame. Frustrated eyewitnesses say the fire service failed to show up on time, the reason for the inferno affecting so many shops. The fire service is in its defense, saying they were responding to 2 distress calls. At the same time, the reason they delayed in arriving at the scene. Joy News' Faustina Safo was at the scene and has come through with this report.
Well, it has taken the fire service close to 3 hours to douse the flames here at Circle or Donna. It's still yet to be determined the cause of the fire, but then we can see behind us quite a number of people gathered around in an effort to salvage their goods. Now we know that so far a number of shops have been burned down. The police is here trying to control the crowd to avoid them going in to try to salvage their goods. They're yet to give us an exact number, the number of shops affected. We'll be getting that shortly, but then we noticed that some individuals were helping the police as well as the fire service douse the flames. They've been around. Let's get closer to them and speak to them. Boss, Pacho, they need see.
Me Pacho, say me was second happy. Na Miss Meton idea wo anim ha ya. Ti yet hono me yet say boys no wa chiri hono. Sha say fire nti e ro hye ne ekohwe nti e ro hye ekohwe no. Ti na bi gina hono na mehwe. Ana boys no mo no mo ye debate. Omo gina na we say oh yam fresh up no be shop na omo he de den she we inside hono. And be mu say omo fresh fire service. Ada say ko say ko mu bishop na ni no na say ko mu dum sa jacket wa na ye sa no. An happy sa. Ti na yam say like omo be say omo fresh fire service for no omo ba. Nti omo anya sa nti eja ne bofa akiri hono. E na be ne fa akiri oni na nti e fa akiri oni na no. Ti ye be hu ase bia abene all market ni na neighbor until ye shall see amanfo phone shops ahihye wa ase ne amanfo enwoma ahye wa ha no enya asem ketwa no kura de enya asem ketwa kura enwoma bebere na ahihye wa ase ahye pa.
Okay, nti sesia no shop ben na eba ne sen aija tosa shop no o makatra wana
some shop ketwa be na me de mani hu ye shop ketwa bi sometimes we so be one man shop no em say like upon a doom light no. Oh, I know Obusu on my upon a doom light no. Oh, until don't me forget it. Say also doom the light. Enti me moon is ebia or so sometime maybe when any almost fault. Ebia or forget anyone doom light na be. Until last so they forget no more doom light no more so doom light no more sa. Definitely jebet my day. Aso.
The NDC flag bearer John Mahama says the base of the NDC is energized and poised to win the 2024 general election. According to him, his recent campaign tour of all the 275 constituencies ahead of the party's presidential and parliamentary primaries pushed the members to double their effort for victory in the next election. At the Thanksgiving service at the Ringway Gospel Center Assemblies of God Church, the former president called for hard work and unity among the party ahead of the polls.
In 2020, we went again for the election, and again, we lost. And again, we came here after the Supreme Court case, and we gave thanks to God for His mercy and in protecting us. And as I said, His ways, our ways are not His ways. But on hindsight, when I think about it, I believe that we owe him a debt of gratitude that we didn't win in 2020. We would have been given these haircuts and all this IMF wahala. And he said, look, this is not the time, my children. You stand aside. And we know that he will make things well in his own time. So this is just the first step we held primaries. Many people had said we don't need to waste resources so that we can apply those resources to the main election, and so I should be allowed to go unopposed and all that. And that's why when I gave my acceptance speech, I thanked my opponent, I thanked Dr. Dufo, and I thanked Mayor Kojo Bomsu for participating in the primaries, even though Dr. Dufo withdrew at the last minute when he saw that, it was going to be a tsunami. So, but if he hadn't filed and he was unopposed, it would not have compelled us to do the rounds that we did. And when we did those rounds and I saw our delegates and the excitement and the passion with which they came to the events that we went to, I think that exercise in going round really helped the party, because it has shaken the base of the party and prepared the party and made it ready for what we're going to confront in 2024. And so we thank God again for that our colleagues participated in the primaries.
Acting Ashanti Presbytery Synod Moderator Reverend Samuel Senano Asieni says indiscipline among leaders and Ghanaians is the cause of the prolonged struggle against illegal mining. Illegal mining continues to devour arable land in Ghana despite intense effort to combat it. Reverend Asieni says the fight against the menace must begin with the people in authority. There's more in this report.
Illegal mining has greatly degraded sensitive lands, contaminated water bodies, and exposed many communities to serious environmental and health risk. The menace has resulted in loss of lives and vast vegetative cover. The call to end the menace has intensified following a report by Professor Frimpong Boateng, former chairman of the Interministerial Committee on Illegal Mining. Several government and public officials were named in the report as being involved in Galamsey activities in the country. Reverend Samuel Senano Asieni admonished leaders to lead the fight against illegal mining. He was addressing a Presbytery Congress in Kumasi at the 13th Synod of the Ashanti Presbytery of Evangelical Presbyterian Church.
We are sick as Ghanaians and we need healing. Why are we sick? The indiscipline is too much for us. The Galamsey issue. Today, our water bodies nowhere to be found. That is will affect our health, water to drink. But not until we change. The indiscipline is too much. Let us be disciplined. The Galamsey should stop. And the leaders should show example.
This year's Synod occasion was themed, Revive Us Again, O Lord, Heal and Restore Us. Speaking on a theme, Pastor Douglas Asamani admonished Christians to live Christ-like lives that would reflect in their societies.
As Christians, peace is very paramount. Love and oneness is what is important in our Christian life. As I was saying this morning, we know that the fabric of society is broken down and the environment as well is also having a problem. As Christians, we must protect the environment against forest destruction and Galamsey. We must build our nation on good principles of God, because He prepared the place for us to have a good life. There is always this LTVT or plus. We must stand up and against it. But before we talk against it, we must be clean in our hearts that we can take action against one or some of these issues. There is very important thing for the Christian is to bring a change into society.
The Ashanti Presbytery 13th Synod assembled Presbytery delegates across the region. The occasion was used to appreciate the work of some members of the church. Reporting for Joy News, Clinton Yeboah.
Now, government's quest to digitize and transition the educational sector onto an electronic learning platform is fast gaining momentum as stakeholders commence a regional consultative dialogue on digital and electronic learning. The regional meetings are to consolidate effort and ideas to complement the traditional brick-and-mortar form of education with hopes of introducing an e-learning platform in the coming year. There's more in this report.
Ghana's educational system was derailed following the emergence of COVID-19 pandemic, forcing many students, especially public basic schools, to stay out of class for nearly a year. The situation hampered the progress of academic activities, necessitating the introduction of a virtual learning platform. Stakeholders in the educational sector and telecommunication service providers have been dialoguing at a regional integration program on online digital and electronic learning, beginning in the Ashanti region. The exercise is to formally and completely transform Ghana's education system. Executive Director of SENLOS, Nana Jemfi Ejabo, says policies and other resources are being instituted to hybridize the educational sector.
When you talk about technology in education, certain things has to be in place before you can think of entirely even moving your education from the traditional setup to online. You need to look at policies, you need to look at infrastructure, you need to look at content, you need to look at capacity building, you need to look at assessment, you need to look at curriculum. All these has to be in place before you can say that, yes, I am moving totally to online. Now Ghana, I will say that we are ready for hybrid now.
Currently, the Ministry of Education, through the initiative, is running both online and offline learning and teaching platforms via its iBox and iCampus GH. Consultant at Sendelos, Dr. Kofi Sapon, says the new national framework would afford the youth access to degree programs online.
This framework is going to be an integrated platform which will fully be deployed for young people in Ghana to enroll on and learn without classroom space. So they will learn right from attain their degrees purely online. They will not need to go to a classroom. They may not even have seen their teachers before. All what they are going to do, they are going to do their teaching, they are going to have their assessment, they are going to have their courses, everything fully integrated on the platform.
Goal 4 of the Sustainable Development Goals provides an inclusive and equitable quality education and lifelong learning opportunities for all. UNESCO representative in Ghana, Abdul Rahman Diallo, assures of an all-inclusive e-learning policy.
The objective is the inclusion, equity, inclusion for all, and all means for all. So whatever we develop at the global, national, or regional level is to ensure that each beneficiary's specificities are to be taken into account. So that's why within the framework also of the responses for ICT in education, we have to ensure that they are tailored products for disabled person.
STEM policy advisor at the Ministry of Education, Professor Makadoma Samoa, is emphasizing on resources for sustainability of the program.
We want to make sure that we will have the resources to continue to do the things that we do all the time. We also want to ensure that we have teachers who have been trained well so that there will be no short supply of teachers. We want to make sure that we have the digital devices, and in addition to the digital devices, we also have data to be able to undertake all this.
The national policy meeting is expected to be replicated across the 16 regions of the country. For Joy News, my name is Emmanuel Bright-Kweku.
Now, the Center for Indigenous Knowledge and Organizational Development, CICOD, has been organizing a workshop for peasant farmers and organizations in agroecology practice to deepen the understanding of the practice and address climate change in the transition ecological zone. Now, the program is aimed at creating awareness and strengthening collaboration among stakeholders, promoting agroecology, as well as building relationships and synergies for advocacy and influence policy at district and regional levels for a wider acceptance of the practice of to mitigate climate change. And Asabed has more in this report.
Smallholder farmers are one of the most vulnerable groups to climate change. Yet, efforts to support farmers' adaptation are hindered by the lack of information on how they are experiencing and responding to climate change. Study has shown that climate change is already having significant adverse impacts on smallholder farmers across the country, and there is an urgent need for government, donors and practitioners to ramp up efforts to help smallholder farmers cope with existing climate impacts and build resilience to future changes. As a result, ActionAid, in partnership with the Center for Indigenous Knowledge and Organizational Development, CICOD, through its national agroecology movement, is pushing for the adoption of a climate-smart agriculture to help save the environment. Kwame Aframdentra is the Bono East Regional Programs Manager for ActionAid.
Today's engagement is a platform of sharing experience. The successes is our farmers are chalking from practicing agroecology as a sustainable way of doing agriculture. Now we have all the agri directors and we are showcasing whatever we are harvesting from the area. So they are also giving us policy perspective, what the government is also doing. So you can see at the background the discussions that they are having is to look at how we can fuse what the farmers are saying and what the as a ministry or as a department is also doing, so that qualitatively we can address issues of climate change.
The annual meeting also seeks to bring together key stakeholders in the agri sector to share ideas and experiences on mitigating climate change. Head of programs for the southern sector at CICOD, Wilberforce Latte, says there is the need for a strong partnership between the formal and non-formal sectors to achieve this goal.
I strongly believe that in any field, apart from agriculture, if we want to make any headway, we need to get the formal institutions and the non-formal or non-government institutions and government institutions working together, because we have the same client, that is the community. And basically that's what we're going to do. So though I must say that this meeting today has been very useful so far as I'm concerned, because I'm beginning to see that enthusiasm, in forging these partnerships.
Boabi Adams is the Sunyani West District Director of Agriculture. He bemoans one of the biggest challenges facing smallholder farming, and this, according to him, is weed control.
Today, as you've seen, most of the concerns shared by the participants have been how we will be able to control weeds in an organic food. That has been the greatest challenge to the development of organic agriculture. So I think meeting here, we are trying to find ways to see how we can partner, especially academic institutions, to see how best adequate research can go into finding ways in controlling waste in an organic food.
Some of the participants lauded the organizers of the workshop and highlighted some of the challenges facing the sector. Grace Afra is a farmer and the president of the Banda Bao Smallholder Women's Farmers Association. She expressed worry at the lack of labor in the agri sector, with the youth migrating to the urban areas.
Because of the labor, everybody is busy now. The youth who could have been helping us in that way for money, majority of them are living in cities now. So whose son will you get to go and be using the hoe and the cutlass every day? So that is our bigger challenge.
Reporting for Joy News, Anas Sabit, Tichiman.
Now, the Notre Dame Girls Senior High School is champions of the 2023 Onga Cook Art. Now, the Bono region-based school put up an impressive performance, leading the entire contest to beat Yas and Toa Girls, Apam SHS and Seshi Bakwai SHS. Joy Prime's Juan Manyaza has more in the following report.
This is the grand finale of the 2023 Onga Cook Art. 4 different schools with different claims to fame, but with one agenda.
Seshi Bakwai SHS, Jasantua Girls SHS, Apam SHS, Notre Dame SHS.
It's a battle of knowledge, skillful cooking and culinary art. The competing schools are poised to wow the judges with their hunger-licious meals. Before that, the knowledge of the contestants were tested. Notre Dame girls left nothing to chance, taking a slim lead in the first round. They were closely tailed by the pride of the Ashanti region, Ya Asantewaa girls.
Main difference between tender and tough cuts of meat is that?
Tough meat has long fibers.
Exactly the answer.
Bono-based Notre Dame girls maintained fine form in the second and third rounds, extending the lead by 3 points. The contest is decided in the final stage.
So you live with your uncle who is a lacto-ovo vegetarian. Select the appropriate protein from the local commodities of your choice. Prepare, cook, and serve a 2-course lunch for his 55th birthday celebration.
After an hour of endurance in the kitchen, the 4 meals were ready.
Food is for vegetarian. It doesn't mean that you should cover the plates with a lot of vegetables.
Knowing that cowbell has all the nutritional needs needed by our uncle, we decided to use cowbell instead of other products to suit his nutritional needs.
Excellent. What do you mix inside to turn the color into brown?
Take the agushi to prevent its rawness.
And then we milled it.
Yes.
Excellent. That is how I want students to do.
We decided to omit the egg because our uncle is 55-year-old and at that age, he doesn't need a lot of fat, which the egg yolk contains. So we decided to replace the protein in the egg with soya beans.
The innovation is coming out.
Unfortunately, Seshwi Bekwai Senior High School and the Palm Senior High School could not up the game in the kitchen.
The first position goes to Notre Dame.
It was all excitement for Notre Dame Girls Senior High School as they clinched the grand prize.
Oh, please let us see some smiles. Some smiles.
So we prepared turmeric rice yam, onga soy delight, and for our dessert we did tiger nut surprise, and the dessert wowed the judges, and we did very well in our theoretical aspect. I think that's what pushed us a bit, and a little pinch of goodness from God. Yahweh, Yama, Yama, Yahweh.
Notre Dame Girls Senior High School took home a cash prize of 20,000 Ghana cedis, a plaque, medals, kitchen essentials, and Onga products. Joan Nyame Manyaza's report.
And that's how we wrap up the AM news for you. There's more news on myjoyonline.com. My name is Samuel Kojo Brace. Do stay with us. There's more coming up on the AM show. All right, so welcome back to the AM show, and time for us to bring you what the papers are reporting on the news review segment of the show. This segment is brought to us by Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic. Now, they are offering free prostate screening and free female fertility screening in Accra at the Spintex opposite Shell signboard, in Kumasi, Kronoma Boy here behind the Angel Educational Complex. Takrade, we are at the Anaji Estate, Tema, in Community 22, Techiman Hanswa and Esiama. You can call us on 0244-867068, 0244-867068, or 0274-234321, 0274-234321. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, then end to chronic diseases. Well, Today we are lucky to be joined by the Executive Director for the Media Foundation for West Africa, Mr. Suleiman Brahima. Good morning to you, Chief, and I hope you're well.
Good morning. Thank you very much. I'm doing well.
Great. So I have the Daily Guide newspaper, I have the Chronicle, the Finder newspaper, the Ghanaian Publisher, and the Custodian. Let's start with the Daily Guide newspaper. It says, darkness engulfs Accra. It comes with a picture of the Greater Accra Regional Minister, Henry Korte. I'll hand over power to NPP. That's according to the President, Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo. 6 killed in gory accident. Ghana Health Service lifts COVID-19 restrictions. And Preeclampsia Sankofa Gold is back. Okay, all right. Now let's turn to page 3. It says the President, Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo, has stated emphatically that he will hand over the baton of leadership of the country to a new patriotic party president in 2024 to sustain his splendid works in political office. Addressing a mammoth political rally in Kumewu on Sunday, he introduced the MPP parliamentary candidate Ernest Yao Enim for the Tuesday by-election to the people. According to him, his MPP administration has done a yeoman's job to put the country on a path of prosperity despite international shocks that have adversely affected world economies, which Ghana is included. President Akufo-Addo therefore stated that MPP would peacefully elect their next flag bearer, and the party would also go ahead to unite and campaign for their next leader to succeed him as president in 2024. Sounding very confident, he indicated that the citizenry are discerning, therefore they would definitely reward the NPP's good works by voting for the party's next flag bearer to lead the country in 2024. Quote, we have done the work already, and those who have eyes to see can see our positive works. But those who cannot see our good works, I'm sorry, I cannot help them. We shall hand over to MPP presidential candidate in 2024, end quote, he stressed. Well, Mr. Brahima, what do you make of this comment by the president that he believes in the work that his party has done, and therefore he trusts that the flag bearer that they would elect will go ahead and win the election in 2024, and that he will hand over power to an MPP government come 2025?
Well, I don't expect the president to say that he's done badly or poorly. I don't also expect the president to say that he expects to hand over to a candidate of any of the opposition parties. I think his expectations are that he would be handing over power to an MPP candidate. Those are his expectations, and those are his own assessments of his leadership. But certainly, there are people who would question the president's claim about how fantastic he's done in terms of his leadership. I think there are issues. Yes, we are in this crisis, and many other countries around the world are in a crisis of perhaps a similar nature. But given the circumstances in Ghana, given the endowments that we have in Ghana, I think that our circumstance is quite self-inflicted. We could have avoided what we are in now, or at least we wouldn't have dug ourselves so deep in the pit of economic crisis. But we find ourselves in a situation like this. I think that people are also going to remember the promises that were made and to ask whether they have been fully or even partially redeemed in terms of all the things that were promised. One district, one factory, one village, one dam, and all the things that were said. I believe that people are also going to recall that so much state money has been spent in digging a very huge pit around the parliament area. And buildings belonging to the state were pulled down in order for that pit to be constructed. And now the state may have to spend additional resources in filling up that pit. And so I think we don't have time to go into all the nitty-gritties, but of course, the government has also done a number of things. it's significant that we have a number of ambulances across the country, which was a promise. It's great that so many kids have had the opportunity to be in second cycle schools, even though I should say that the program and how poorly it's been managed has literally brought the quality of secondary education on its knees. There are kids who were in school for just about 2 months and have had to stay home for the next 4 months before they go back to school. So yes, a number of kids have gone to school. Maybe they wouldn't have, but quality has significantly been compromised. So yes, there have been a few things that have been done here and there, but people are also going to remember the difficulties that they are going through.
At the end of the day, from past experiences, which one will weigh higher than the other? Is it the current difficulty that people are going through, or probably, like you say, some of the things they've done rightly?
Well, at the end of the day, I believe that people are going to look at their circumstances, how well they are able to cope with living conditions. That certainly is going to be the biggest deciding factor. And I would say that, of course, the MPP by now would know that the scales are tilted against them, because, I mean, since the Fourth Republic, no government has crossed the 8 years. And to cross the 8 years, perhaps it will require something significantly different being done by a government over an 8-year period. And I don't think that this government has done that. President Kufuor perhaps did that, and therefore the MPP had a brighter chance of winning the 2008 elections, but it didn't happen. And for 2024 elections, certainly the odds are against the MPP. If you look at the fact that, look, this is the end of 8 years for a government, people are struggling to survive economically. This is a government that lampooned the previous one over a number of things, including the IMF deal, and now they've had to go back to the IMF, even begging more than any other government has had to do to secure an IMF deal. This is a government that organized the Kenke Party by the Ministry of Finance to celebrate the fact that we had exited IMF just in 2019. And 2022, we had to be on our knees begging the IMF to come back with all the conditionalities. And I believe that the IMF program is going to now have the ramifications that we would see under an IMF program being rolled out. I think for now we are celebrating the fact that, 600 million has hit the Bank of Ghana accounts, but the implications are yet to be felt. And therefore, for me, of course, the party has about a year and a half to do the magic, but otherwise the odds are certainly against the MPP.
Anyway, let's see if the remaining years can be used to really perform any magic. A bit on the Preeclampsia Sankofa gold mines coming back. Now, the people of Preeclampsia, an ancient mining town in the western region, have praised government for making the rejuvenation of the Preeclampsia Sankofa Gold Limited its topmost priority. According to residents, the contribution of the gold mine to the Preeclampsia local economy was enormous, and that it shut down in 2014 stalled business and commercial activities in the once vibrant mining town. Preeclampsia Sankofa Gold Limited is a state-owned gold mining company established in 1994 to extract gold mainly from old tailings. The company has not been operational since 2014, and several appeals by the resident on successive government to help revive it were allegedly not adhered to. However, the current president, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, in his electionary campaign in 2016, promised the people of Preeclampsia that the company will resume production under the next NPP government. So upon the assumption of the office, President charged a majority shareholder, which is the GMPC, to constitute a committee to ensure the company was revived. Now, we are told the company has been revived and that the managing director has been appointed for the company in the person of Justice Aqua, who notes that the Preeclampsia Sankofa Gold Mine is the only mining company that is wholly owned and operated by Ghanaians without expatriate involvement. We know how this mining industry works, and we have experiences. Now that this company has been revived, what should be our approach to it such that we don't come back and talk about it collapse again?
Well, it's all about management and the goodwill that leadership would show. If it doesn't turn out to be another money-making entity for people and for those in leadership, then perhaps it would work. But if we look at the experiences so far, one cannot but have a bit of doubt as to whether this one would work. But yes, you don't want to write off anything. But I believe that at some point, AngloGold was a state-owned entity. At some point, we had to sell it. The telecom industry remains one of the most profitable industries in our country and around the world now that everything is almost going digital. We had Ghana Telecom that was literally Ghana owned, and at some point we had to basically sell our majority shares out. And I believe that there is still talks about even the shares that we still have in Ghana Telecom, or now is Vodafone, going. A lot of other state entities. We had Ghana Airways. Where is it? With Tema Oil Refinery. People are being paid. We are not refining oil. And Ghana Steel Company Limited, a lot of them. We had this sugar factory that has been in contention over a number of years now, political contention, I should say. So one would be, it remains less hopeful about the state venturing into another business. But it is a different entity. It is about gold. If it is well managed, I believe that it can be as profitable as the other mining companies in the country. And as I said, it all comes down to management and commitment by leadership to ensure that it becomes a profitable entity that benefits the nation in terms of the monies that will be generated and the employment that will be created.
Okay. Now, just before we shift to another paper, maybe your brief thought on darkness engulfing Accra. Now, the story is that nights in Accra are no longer as bright as they should be, the reason for which is not far-fetched. Many of the street lights are out of order, the fluorescent tubes having been off for several months. Motorists who depend upon the illumination from the street light for navigation have to make do with partial or full darkness. This situation compels them to turn on the high light at night, making things difficult for vehicular traffic from the opposite direction. Your thought on it?
Well, that's the reality, and it's an unfortunate development. It is not just the street lights, but even the traffic lights. I can count a number of traffic, lights on my way to work that are not working. And these are major intersections. And it's not been not working for a week. It's been off for the last, 3, 4, 5 months. And that's really unfortunate. I don't know what is happening. I don't know what it takes to get these things fixed. But certainly the Greater Accra Regional Minister has been one of the top performing ministers of the Akufo-Addo government. But these things have to be fixed. It's really not the best for our capital.
Okay. Now, let's do the Chronicle newspaper now. And Baumia tells Kumewu voters petrol prices are tumbling because of the gold for oil policy. I won't disappoint you, Afriya Koto tells MPP executives. MPP NDC descend on Kumewu. When Paramount Chief was properly installed, according to Chidom Hene. Let's do the story. Now it says, okay. The Vice President, Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia, has called on voters in the Kumewu constituency and Ghanaians in general to ignore the propaganda work of the National Democratic Congress that seeks to paint a gloomy picture of the country. According to him, when the opposition party led by former President John Dramani Mahama was in power, they could not introduce any sound policy to transform the national economy. But they were the same people going around the country to throw dust into the eyes of the people. Speaking at a mammoth rally at Kumewu yesterday to convince voters to vote for the MPP candidate in tomorrow's by-election, VIP Bawumia said one of the sound policies of the government that was really benefiting the masses was the gold for oil policy. According to him, because of this sound policy they introduced somewhere last year, prices of petroleum products were beginning to come down. Now, tie into that story is the fact that big waves of both the ruling party and opposition party, NDC, have converged at Kumewu, capital of the Setre Kumewu district. They are desperately canvassing for vote for the parliamentary seat, which was declared vacant following the demise of Mr. Philip Atta Basua. The MP for the Kumewu constituency in the Ashanti region, Philip Basua, died on March 27, 2023. Now, there is a by-election tomorrow, and that all parties are canvassing for vote there. So, gold for oil is the reason why petrol prices are tumbling, and the fact that now all eyes are on Kumewu because of by-election tomorrow. What do you make of this? Is it really the case that if you look at the fact that fuel prices are coming down, we can really point our fingers to the gold for oil policy to say that this is the reason why this is coming down?
Well, I doubt. And when they say fuel prices have come down, I don't know from what level. As far as I know, it's around 11.5 or 11.8 or 9.
Yeah, it's from 11.3 to 11 points. I'm due 11.6, I'm due 11.7.
Yes, so I really don't know what they mean by fuel prices coming down. As far as I know, with the IMF intervention, the CD is around perhaps 10 point something now. In Rwanda, even in the banks, I believe it will be they will be doing less than that. So if fuel prices per liter now is around 11 point something, what it means is that currently we are buying petrol at more than $1 per liter. There was a time when the CD was around 14, almost getting to 15. So if at that time the price of petrol was around 14 cedis or 15 cedis, that was about $1 to per liter. So if we are still doing now even a little over $1 per liter, where is the reduction? I think these are just sometimes what I call the gimmicks to deceive the people. We should begin to face the reality. That's the only way we can develop this country, rather than thinking that we can be playing games like this, just basically to send sweet messages to the people.
I think they are saying so because it used to be around 14, 13, and now some people do 12.3, 11 downwards. And that's why they are saying that then the prices are coming down.
Yeah, but the point I'm making is that when it was 12, 13, what was the rate of the dollar? Because at the end of the day, the cost of living of people, if somebody was earning 1,000 cedis a month and was then buying fuel at that rate, yes, today if it is reduced, it is better for that person. But the reality for me is that it all depends on the exchange rate. For example, if we are able to do a magic and the CD gets to about 7 to $1, and then petrol comes to about $8 a liter. Basically, because we literally import maybe the largest percentage of our petrol consumption from outside. And indeed, if you check the statistics, the highest importing commodity is the petrol and the associated commodities. And so it's about where the dollar is. I really haven't seen any significant impact that can be attributed to a policy like gold for oil. When it started, the messages that were being sent was as though because of that, petrol was going to come under, or fuel was going to come, say like 9 or 8 or 7. That was the impression that they created. And today we are basically hovering around the same figures, and yet they still would want to say because of that policy something has changed. I don't think that anything has changed.
Okay. Let's do the final newspaper now. Kumewu by-election is a test case for MPP's 2024 victory, according to President Nana-Addo. Dr. Akoto promises not to let NPP Ghana down. Enini Yeboah is an exceptional CJ, according to the president. Public debt drops by 141.1 billion cedis from 575.7 billion cedis to 434.6 billion cedis in December on the back of over 60% cedi appreciation. Aflao border GIS officers attacked, injured during night patrol. Now, the story on page 2 talks about the public debt dropping by 141.1 billion. It says the total public debt stock fell by 141.1 billion cedis in December 2022 to end the year at 434.6 billion cedis on the back of over 60% cedi appreciation. This is approximately 71.2% of gross domestic product, GDP. Data from the Bank of Ghana has revealed that the total public debt is equivalent to $52 billion. The summary of economic and financial data released by BOG for May 2023 shows that Ghana's debt in cedi term rose consistently to 575.7 billion cedis at the end of November 2022, representing about 93.5% of GDP. But it has declined significantly to 434.6 billion in December 2022. That should be a good news then, isn't it?
Of course, I mean, anytime the cedi does well, that is good for our economy. And essentially what it means is that if you owed, or if Ghana owed $1,000 to a foreign entity, and the cedi was around 14 to $1, what it meant was that you needed to exchange 14,000 cedis to be able to pay your $1,000 debt. And so now if the cedi has come to 10, what it means is that you basically can change 10,000 instead of 14,000 to pay the same $1,000 debt. In terms of the dollar, I mean the debt in dollar terms, it remains the same. But how much you need in your local currencies to be able to service that debt is what has come down. So again, that's the point that I was making, that in one breath, we want to do analysis to indicate how the exchange rate has made us gain. And in another breath, when fuel prices is coming down, we want to say that it is good for oil and not the cedi appreciation. So I think that our government has to be consistent and has to be truthful to the people. But as I said, if the dollar comes to about $5 to $1 today, what it means is that our debt in dollars, in cedi terms, would be perhaps more than 60% reduced, which would be good for all of us. And we would understand it that it is because the cedi has appreciated. And in the same way, fuel prices would then have to significantly drop, and we need to attribute that to the appreciation of the cedi, rather than trying to claim success of policies which really is not really succeeding or is not bringing any much. What is important is that the people must be told the truth. As the president said in Kumewu, Ghanaians are discerning, and therefore, when you are lying to them, they know you are lying to them. When you are being truthful to them, they know you are being truthful to them. So we shouldn't say that Ghanaians are discerning and yet think that we can fool them. What is important for me is that for this country to develop, our leaders must appreciate that the people are now full aware and they can analyze things for themselves. And therefore, what is important is to be truthful to them, to be honest to them, and to be sincere with them.
Okay. Let's do the Ghanaian publisher now. And our 2024 victory begins in Kumewu, Akufo-Addo declares. I won't let you down. Dr. Friyakoto fired up for MPP top job. Government must ban rice importation. That's according to Jospon and BBNE MP. Chairman fight over album. Ghana left COVID-19 restrictions at all entry point. Now, the chairman of the Jospon group of companies, Dr. Joseph Sian Japan, has challenged Ghana to ban importation of rice just like what Nigeria did and has now become self-sufficient in rice production. He argued if Nigeria has done it, Ghana can equally do it and stressed there is no need to reinvent the wheel but simply copy from the West African neighbor. Dr. Japan was speaking at a two-day Ghana Food Security Conference 2023 on the theme Enhancing Food Security, the role of Ghanaian scientists at Gomwa Fete in the central region. After banning importation of rice, Nigeria made remarkable progress in rice production during the previous decade, surpassing Egypt with yearly production of 5.8 million tons. Now, if you follow the rice value chain and what we've been doing there in terms of the local rice, do you foresee a possibility of us surviving if we should ban local rice importation now?
Well, available data indicates that in 2021, Ghana's rice importation was to the tune of $552 million. I believe that rice, $552 million worth of rice which came in was consumed by Ghanaians.
Yeah.
And if that quantity of rice would come in to, and we don't have a glut of it, what it means is that we are not at the point where local production can make us, can feed the population in terms of the demand for rice. I fully share the fact that we should get to a point where we should be self-sufficient in terms of our local rice production. But that would require the implementation of certain policies for maybe a certain period of time. We cannot do it so suddenly. If we were to do that, we would have, a shortage of rice within the system. But if we want to do that, which is a good thing to do, maybe we have to roll out a policy and say, look, this policy should mean that in the next 2 years, we're not going to import rice. And it will require subsidies for local producers. It will require huge investment to beef up local production so that within, let's say, a year or two, we'll be self-sufficient in our rice production. Nigeria has done it. And I believe that with prudent policies, we should be able to do it. But it is not something that we can just abruptly do, because that would affect the system quite considerably.
Okay. Now, just before we wrap up, what's your take on what's happening in Kumewu ahead of tomorrow's by-election?
Well, Kumewu is in the Ashanti region. It's certainly a stronghold of the MPP, and I expect the MPP to win that elections. Of course, if you look at the 2020 election, the independent candidate, who is still contesting as independent candidate, got a significant number of votes. The late Basoa got a little over 13,000, and the independent candidate got around a little over 11,000. Yeah. So the gap was just about 2,000. So that really is the challenge. I don't think that the challenge is from the NDC. The challenge is really from the independent candidate. And that poses a lot of threat to the MPP, because it then threatens the one-man majority, or well, now perhaps it's two-man majority because of the recent decision on the
Assen North constituency.
But it still doesn't make it good if the independent candidate should win and decides, for example, that he's not going to do business with the MPP. So I expect the MPP to win. I can understand why they are putting a lot of effort in there, because the independent candidate indeed poses a lot of threat for the MPP. But what is important for analysts is going to be by what percentage is the MPP winning. I think that is what we're going to look at and say, did the NDC do well than they did in 2020? Did the independent candidate do well than he did in 2020? Or did the MPP do well in terms of the votes that will be garnered? That will be what, for me, is going to be important for analysis, and not whether MPP wins or not. I expect the MPP to win.
Grateful to you, Mr. Suleiman Abrahima, for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much for having me. Have a great week.
All right. Now, I have seen, sir. And he is the Executive Director for the Media Foundation for West Africa. We'll take a break here. We'll bring you sports afterwards. Do stay with us.
Let's do sports now. On the AM show with me, Muftau Nabila Abdullah. The Ghana Premier League table have got a new leader right now after Midiama FC defeated Accra House of Oak 5-1 at the Accra Sports Stadium to go to the summit of the Premier League table. Ediana Stars, who have occupied the position prior to Midiama FC's success over Accra House of Oak, also lost 3-0 to Accra Lions.
Baba Salifu Apiga and Salifu Samari. It will be Apiga. It is Apiga. It takes a deflection and it's a goal. Accra Lions up in the scores. Apiga's left-footed delivery deflects off Anochi Bedu. One of those three players who formed the wall. Here is Opon, puts one through. This is promising. Can it be the second? It is the second. Accra Lions put the icing on the cake. Evans Boche, the scorer. Oh, and they've got some wild celebrations here. Ado completely beaten. The vision from Opon, on point, and Boche, right composure, intelligent movement, and a good finish. Hangs on. Now decides to switch to Opon. He assisted Boche for the second goal. Here is Apiga with a cross, and Bassett finally gets his goal. It was always coming, but just a matter of time. Seydou Bassett on the score sheet finally. After several missed opportunities, the switch from Boche to Opon was lovely. And the awareness from Opon to pick out Apiga. Look at how Apiga spotted the movement of Bassett. Bassett is intelligent, he stayed on, and the connection was perfect. I told you about how exciting it is to watch this Accra Lions team when they're in their elements. And tonight is one of those beautiful nights of football from Accra Lions. Training. Hearts nil, Mediama nil, match day 31 of the Ghanaian top flight. Here is Babel for Mediama. Switches to the left-hand side. Now comes Fojo. Fojo goes for goal. He takes a deflection and does the goal for Mediama. The Mauve and Yellow have taken the lead at the Accra Sports Stadium. Mediama Sporting Club 1. He on the move. He stays onside. Here comes Fojo. Another opportunity for Mediama. Fojo goes past Kredu and does the third goal for Mediama. Jonathan Soa finally gets on the score sheet.
Mediama SC taking charge of the Premier League table now as they sit at the top with 53 points, whilst the Diana Stars have got 52. The likes of Bechemi United and Co. follow up with 51 and 50 respectively. And Hearts of Oak and Asante Kotoko, they occupy the 7th and 8th positions on the league table respectively. Kotoko will come up against Kotoko Royals later today. Let's go to Kumasi and bring you highlights of the Waffle Under-20 Girls Cup of Nations that is currently happening in Ghana. The Black Princesses opened their campaign with a 3-0 win over Benin.
Huge header by Sadatu Comfort Yabua. Ghana a chance. President 30 years of Preeclampsia. Mariam Ponsa doubles. Instant substitution paying off. Her first touch results in a goal. Super substitution. Mariam Ponsa with a goal. Doubling the lead. This is what Ghana lacked in the first period. That was her first touch since she replaced Faisal Seydou, and she scored. Mariam Ponsa. Don't be too surprised. This is her specialty. She scores for fun. She has doubled Ghana's lead. Throw in. Stella Nyameche. A referee with a free kick for Ghana. This is just on the edge. On the edge of the penalty area. And Ghana have this to extend their lead. Stella finding her slot, goes for goal. How easy did she make it look like? Stella Nyameche, after so many attempts.
Welcome back to the AM show. It's time for us to go into details of the big stories. Now, government has confirmed receipt of some $600 million as first tranche of an extended credit facility from the IMF. Though this may bring some relief to the government, Ghanaians may have to brace themselves for tough times ahead. This morning on the AM show, we are counting the cost of an IMF deal and what to expect. Our guest, Dr. Tiah Mahama, is from the Office of the Vice President with the government perspective there. Dr. Saidi Drusu is an economist. Dr. Kofi Klucherson is an industrialist. And I'm learning this morning that he's been part of Ghana's industrial revolution for many decades now. Dr. Richmond Etuahin is a banking consultant. Dr. Kofi Klucherson is some former president of the Association of Ghana Industries, and he's here with me in the studio to help us really tease out the real issues with the IMF deal. That 600 million of it has already been credited to the Bank of Ghana account. Doc, grateful to have you in the studio.
Thank you. Nice meeting you.
Nice meeting you too, sir.
First time.
Exactly, yeah. and it's just telling me that there's a lot that we, the young ones, need to learn from you, the old ones. Just from the little chat we've had, you know,
okay.
It tells that no,
we're not that old.
Say again?
We're not that old.
No, but you've seen much more than us, you know.
Yeah.
You've been here quite for a longer time.
Yeah.
So in terms of, you know, the timing, yeah, you've been around for some time and your experience is quite vast.
Well, we tried.
With your knowledge of the Ghanaian economy, and from where we are, we know we are in tough times. But today, the IMF has brought us some respite. 3 billion, out of which 600 million has already been paid. You really understand the real economy. How much does it really mean for the economy to have $600 million?
Well, first, let me say hi to my brother Ken, the finance minister. For his resilience, you know, in trying to push and focus agenda. This is the area that is an expertise, you know, investment banking. So I would like to congratulate him, you know, for doing whatever he has done. Then the issue is what next? You know, now that we have finished that one, as a country, what is the next stage? You know, in life, in an economy like this, and for that matter, in business or in a family life, money is one criteria. You know, once it arrives, you know, it arrives. What happens is normally it's an excitement that the money has arrived, and then the next thing, how would it be applied? That's the next stage, and what would it mean for the family? I want to put family in a context, not a country. You know, so therefore, we spend a lot of time, whole years, you know, following only one issue of the IMF, without looking at other options or preparing for other options, assuming nothing happens. So it has arrived. The Minister of Finance said that it's for budgetary support, which means that probably money is spent already or has been budgeted already, which will disburse against the budgetary support. That's what I understand, whatever it is that they have mentioned. So for the starters, I would say that, you know, he has done very well. As to whether or not there'll be stimulation in the economy moving forward, it's another matter. You know, I've been involved in my short life in many things. You know, I worked and served many presidents in my short life, even though I've never been an assemblyman. I chaired many of these committees of HIPIC, you know, for government, you know, Tiah Mahama, Mills, VAT, Rawlings, and all of them. We've been through all that in what I do. Plus as a private business person and also member of the biggest industry to the Association of Ghana Industries and many more. What is happening in the country today, we need to be able to have a retrospect as to what we can do. But my joy, like your joy FM, is that in Ghana today, thanks to you, the young people, I have a lot of confidence in the future, which I call the next generation, to be able to pick it up from there and move forward. I am in telecom sector, you know, for many years, you know, in the technological sector. Your boss, you know, Kwesi Chum, you know, is now in radio. we all came back from overseas when we were in our 30s.
Okay.
A lot of the policies in Ghana today are all done through us, not through government. You see, but government facilitated, we partnered with government to create the policies that brought all these issues. Today, there are a lot of young people again in the system. One of them just has arrived, and many more who might think that we need to rethink about the future of Ghana after this IMF business. You know, when I finished school many years ago, I wrote to World Bank, the Chicago World Bank and IMF, and to say, well, I want money to go to Ghana to establish a business. What I got back from them was that it's not a bank. It's an institution and a policy institution that facilitates things, you know, for governing nations. So I've learned there is not a vault, you know, to get money from. So therefore, the money that is coming to Ghana today is where does it originated from? So we call it debt, you know, DEBT on the country. So therefore, according to the Minister of Finance, what I heard of yesterday was that it's for budgetary support, like I said earlier on. So whatever the issues are, we need to know how it's going to be disbursed. Our problem in industry, our problem in this sector is that if it is disbursed, what next for the next 2 years of the governing government? You know, so far nothing is coming out yet as to what the issues are. So we need to see how it flows. That's my initial statement, and see what we can do. But I believe that, you know, like we say in business, there must be plan B and plan C. Assuming the force majeure or other issues close in, what do we do? Basically, that is my first, you know, opening statement.
Okay, all right, grateful to you. So let's move on and welcome our next guest in the studio who just joined us here. Doc, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm doing great.
Okay. Now, we were all battling for this because many of you, the economists, said that we were in dire times. Some even predicted that if IMF doesn't come to our aid early, the economy could ground to a halt. We've had this. What do we foresee to be, you know, the impact of this particular arrangement, if you look at all the things that this deal is set to achieve?
Yeah, so first of all, good morning to you and good morning to Doc, my senior brother, for having me to have this discussion. Yeah, on the issue of the $600 million out of the $3 billion expected to be received by Ghana, the immediate impact of this is that we will have some stability in the sense that our foreign exchange, the depreciation of our currency, even though from November up to date, we've had some appreciation of our cedi by some 33%.
Today I'm learning that he even depreciated our debt by some 141 billion cedis.
Yeah, so
just because of the cedi appreciation.
Yeah, I mean the appreciation of the cedi is something that this 600 million is going to bring too. We know that exchange rate has spiral effect. It has cascading effect on inflation to the extent that some of the inflation is imported, and is imported because we have some foreign exchange depreciation. We are expecting to have some price stability also following this amount. Two, I mean, Prof. Doc mentioned that it's a budgetary support. It means that the 2023 budget that the finance minister presented to Parliament, approved by Parliament on behalf of the people of Ghana, we are expecting that means that we'll have a balanced budget going into the end of December 2023 because some funding has been provided to that effect. Another important effect of that is that, you know, it unlocks the foreign direct investment. Because the vote of confidence by the IMF on the Ghanaian economy, the uncertainty that surrounded the economy, the lack of predictability, and the fear that the risk factors that investors were considering, with this amount coming into the Bank of Ghana account, the central bank's account at the Bank of Ghana, it means that some investors or foreign direct investors will now be willing to bring in their capital. In the medium term, we will also expect that Ghana is a major partner or participant in the capital market. Being a major participant in the capital market means that with this money coming, people would then know that, okay, there's some stability, there's some confidence, and then they can then borrow to Ghana. Of course, there are limitations, there are conditionalities regarding borrowing in terms of threshold imposed by the IMF in the context of making our debt very sustainable. But these are some of the immediate impact we are expected, we foresee with this 600 million dollars hitting the accounts of the government.
So how clear is our way to recovery now?
Yeah, so clearly, you cannot have a farm program without a roadmap. So when the government presented the letter of intent, accompanying this letter of intent was the roadmap, which is the Memorandum of Economic and Financial Policy of Government. It clearly stated what government wants to do, how we want to have, within the 3 years, reduce inflation to a single-digit 8% plus or minus 2%. We also have a roadmap on investing into the private sector, private-led growth, where entrepreneurship is going to be an anchor of the PCPEC program. Government has also outlined some, if you like, they call them performance criteria. So the whole essence of the fund is that it is going to be performance-based. So between now and the next 6 months, there are certain things to be achieved. For instance, our reserves position must improve. We'll also look at the central bank claims on the, central government, the threshold on that. We also look at inflation. Because of the performance-based nature of this fund, we are sure that we'll be ticking the boxes as we go. In fact, there are structural benchmark, structural reforms where the cabinet is expected to approve some new policy documents now into November. So all these policies and the complete document presented to the IMF presented the roadmap, the framework to recovery. And the expectation of everyone and even the government is that between 2023 and 2026, we will have brought our economy back to a relatively stable economic path. So this is the expectation, and the blueprint is, it was on the basis of the blueprint that the IMF approved the program.
But that's what is on paper. We know that for you guys in government, usually the paper will look beautiful. But when it comes to implementation, then we have gaps, we have challenges. So if you take what's on the paper, what's the strategy that government is using to ensure that at the end of the day, whatever we've stated on that paper or in that document, we are able to accomplish?
First and foremost, it is in government's own interest to ensure that the paper is achieved, because we cannot have subsequent releases if we don't achieve what is on paper. And when we don't get subsequent releases from the IMF, it means that our program will be derailed. And what it also means is that the Ghanaian people will be back on the street. The government people will now have to face the difficulties of the time. So it is in the interest of the government to ensure that we achieve the program. So that personal interest, of course, of government, in this case, is a commitment enough. Again, there are safeguards. The safeguards in the sense that because it's a farm program, it's money being given by way of non-interest-based loan to the to the central government. The people giving the money also have interest, i.e. the IMF. They have interest because that was what they were looking for, the financing assurance. They don't want a situation where Ghana will not be able to repay them their money, because the 3 billion is a loan, more or less, and Ghana has to pay them back. So because I am the creditor and I have to watch over the debtor to ensure that the debtor takes steps so that the debtor will be able to pay me my money when they fall due. That is another safeguard that I think that aside the parliament having oversight responsibility, aside civil society like media houses also having responsibility, aside industry players all asking questions and putting government on check, on the toe, I think that government's own interests and the fund's own interests are enough commitment to ensuring that we achieve with this program.
Okay. Dr. Tiah Mahama is from the Office of the Vice President, so I'm sure he has a lot of, intel when it comes to how we're going to do it. I'll come back to you to understand how you, the industrialists, are feeling that what this deal could bring to you. But let me go to Dr. Said, who's also an economist, and he's joining us via Zoom now. Doc, you've studied this document between the country and the IMF. What are your pickouts, and how do those tell you that probably we are on a path of recovery that would see us not returning to the IMF?
Good morning to my head.
Great, okay.
Good morning to my co-panelists and good morning to all your listeners. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Oh, okay, great. I think so far, let me say that I'll congratulate Ken Ofori-Atta for being able to secure an early IMF deal. I say it early because the government itself was expecting it by June. So for the first tranche payment of 600 to be coming in May or to have been received in May is really good. But let's put that aside. The first question I would really want to ask is that had the government demonstrated enough fiscal discipline for Ghanaians to trust it will manage the IMF funds well enough, especially now that we are heading into a presidential and parliamentary elections in 2024? I think that is the major question every Ghanaian should be asking the government. Looking at how the government has spent or looking at how the government has managed our finances from 2017 all the way till now. Because even the international community before the IMF deal had asked the government to reduce its ministers, if you could remember, but the government did not do that. So many measures were being put out even by the international community and experts asking the government to cut back on costs in certain areas. The government gave deaf ears to it, never did that. So when you have such a situation and now the government is coming into contact with such huge monies, again, trust becomes important. And if government could actually demonstrate enough to Ghanaians, then I believe whatever that is being in the IMF report, people will begin to believe that the government will be able to achieve them. Right now, I describe the current situation we face. Following the announcement all the way to Friday, the money being received, the first 600 payment, where the finance minister said that it will go into budgetary support. Everything happening now is like honeymoon period. You know, when you're newly married, you're so excited, everything looks good and all that. that is what we are having now in Ghana. So based on the honeymoon period, you see that we're already having a stability in our city because it's reducing as at this point. There's currency appreciation and all that because the dollar is going down because of speculations in the market. That is driving that. It's not that like the government has actually done anything as we speak. That is bringing down, appreciating our city value. So based on the honeymoon period, forest traders and all that, people are anticipating, speculations here and there. So that is why we're having some of these impact. So the government should not at least quickly take credit. Let's see how we move from the honeymoon period into the real marriage. That is where the issues comes in. Look at what is already happening with Kumau by-election. Definitely there will be financing going on and stuff like that. So can the government really commit to the physical discipline? The IMF report is very beautiful, especially if you go to the page 55 of the report, the government roadmap. Believe me, you really be interested in knowing how government will achieve over the 40 policies it has laid out to do. If government actually achieves that, then it will be good for the economy. But looking at the government past record, can we trust it enough and put our confidence and hope in it as Ghanaians that it will actually lead us to this beautiful roadmap that it has laid out in the IMF report?
Now, one other concern is that we've dealt with the domestic debt exchange, but we've not finished with the external debt exchange. We know, for example, Zambia and all of those had the program with the IMF, but because they had not completed the external debt, the funds were not trickling in. How do we ensure that we are able to, complete our external debt so that we don't fall in the examples of what Zambia got into?
I think on that note, at least with the negotiations so far, I'm very confident that the external debt restructuring will also be done. Because if there were no assurances that it will be done, I don't think the IMF will even release the first tranche. But on that aspect, I'm sure that it will be done. But even despite that, look at the domestic debt restructuring that we did. The country hasn't recovered yet, especially the financial institutions, where banks made so many losses. GCB making over $50 million by the end of 2020, and so many other banks. So government itself has to even set up the Financial Stability Fund, which is yet to be set up to deal with that. You understand? So the IMF money itself cannot even do all what we are expecting it to get done, unless we have the donor commitment from other development partners to be able to support. I am not even particularly interested in the banking sector much more, because without the Financial Stability Fund, so many of these banks will collapse. There will be job losses. Yes.
Okay. All right. Grateful to you. Let me come in studio. Dr. Christensen, for you industrialists, how does this deal mean to you? How do you feel now that you know that we've gotten it and then 600 million is already in town?
Well, like I'm saying, like everybody's saying, like my younger brother said, this money is not for industrialists, it's for monetary support.
Yeah, I know.
So therefore, you see, the issues about Ghana is to be able to do collaboration with the private sector. Ghana today has moved on, after many, many years. It cannot be government alone. Government must realize that there are a lot of, look, the last 6 weeks, I've been going on the whole system. There are a lot of brilliant young men in the system with this government, everywhere that you go. I can give you names, I give you the sector that I've been going through and meeting them, and I'm so much impressed. But when you speak to them, the answer comes from their mouth. You say, hey, doc, the top is too heavy for us. So. You see, we grew up the structural adjustment program. It's all the private sector. We see Kofi, we see Chung, wherever it is, Kenoforiata. We move on to the HIPIC. So many of these programs have come. IMFs, young like doc. We helped to build the country because, you see, there are 3 bankruptcies in the world, 13, 11, and 7. I think we are in 11. I chaired a meeting with all the banking sector, about these. And I asked one question. What is going on in this country today? So I told them, are we bankrupt? So they went over look at the face, and one of them is a microphone here. I said, don't worry, I'll take full responsibility for whatever answers come. He said, oh, doc, I want to tell you, yes, we are bankrupt. I said, good, then that's the beginning place. Let's declare that, which area, I'm sure that way to look at the IMF report. I read the IMF report, wonderful report. But who is in charge of that report in terms of implementation? The whole report is written on the issue of growth. I loan you money, how do you pay my debt? If you do, look, one of the major brilliant one was the ECG. For the first time, the CEO of ECG moved in the front, I'm going to collect my debt. And within 2 weeks, he collected 5.7. Why should you have to wait for now to collect $5.7 million debt? Look at top. You see, there are a lot of issues that are going on in this country. I want to know, industry want to know, who do we talk to? Minister of Trade and Industry. Whom do we talk to be able to benefit from the policies of this IMF? I don't think anybody industrial is excited about any IMF because we know what to do. Look, I met Gutam, Ghana Union Traders. I established that many years ago. I was told when I met them, last week, they have 78, sectors that form Ghana Union Traders, over 3 million members. You see, the Bible says the cry of the people is the Bible, the cry of God. You see, like I was saying that, you see, even God had 3 channels of going forward. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, not one. You see, we need to be able to accept that like Doc and all the young people, there are many more brilliant people in the system today. Like Professor Kwate said from ISE, let us have some little conference, little tea or coffee, and talk what is the next level. IMF is gone, it's dead. Nothing you can do about it. Today is Kumahu, by tomorrow another issue of Kumahu, jubilation for another week or 2. What next? You see, what Doc is saying today is that government's commitment. Which government are we talking about? The current government has 1.5 years to go. There are 3 young people who want to be president. They are all Ghanaian young people, brilliant brothers who want to be president. One of them will win. Assuming you say, I don't want to support this, what happens? So we need to be able to be very honest to ourselves. I don't want compared to Zambia or whatever. Ghana is capable.
Okay.
Let's have a Ghana solution. Let all the presidents meet, past and present, drink coffee at Pedrassi Lodge, and let's become friends. The major problem that is, look, sometimes I wonder about this NPP and NDC thing. Look, there's no, I'm saying it for fact, there's no NDC or NPP. They are cousins. NDC and NPP, they are cousins. We released them on the same day, 28 July 1992. To you to stop and create a new policy for Ghana. So what's all these that are going on that we cannot get together and help young people like this to move on and establish their life and families to grow? We don't have a problem. You see, it's not about an academic exercise. It's a Ghanaian exercise. At least on General Sam, I said on your radio. Almost 90 years old guy, General Sam, the issue he's talking about, Asher Larson, Ghana has gone on. Let us go back to the foundation. Ken came, we brought Ken down to Ghana because of the stock exchange. That's how he came to Ghana after the Kelly Gajeko. We brought them, I was part of it. So what happened with the stock exchange? This money is from the New York Stock Exchange, not from anywhere. They carried them around and sent it to the bank. So what's wrong with the Ghana? We have a brilliant vice president. He's been a Bank of Ghana. Is he in charge or is he politically in charge? You see, some of the comments, some of the issues that goes on, please, for me, forest industry, and many, many others, let us hold, fine, this is finished. What do we do going forward? I'm a very optimistic person. I've been through challenges, whatever. The last time I came to I said, look, let's bring our brothers back. We're still doing whatever. Let's do reparation. Let's forgive everybody. Let's begin. We are sorry, we are at fault, we didn't do that. Bring the bank. Let's stimulate the economy. So look, if you don't stimulate the economy, I'm coming up with one of the major projects in Ghana here. How does every home has internet? Students don't have laptops, they don't have internet, they don't have Wi-Fi. Children. Look, some children came to my house yesterday, my cousin. They shoot out Wi-Fi and they are very happy. So let's focus on the growth economy. Look, I drove around Smithers Road yesterday. I don't want to deviate. I was shocked to see the massive development by non-Ghanaians on that road. On that road. You see, so there is a lot to do. We should not too much worried about whatever. Government had done what they have done. Kind of for the Minister of Finance need to do something. He did very well. Like we all congratulate him. Let's focus on what that government is. Let's meet that government. Industry, trade. Let's do a party. Let's do a meeting. Who is that government that's going to implement this? You see, we are worried because, according to Ghana's program, Doc knows, the last budget for this government is in November. That's the last government budget. So what happens in 2024? There's no budget. It's only appropriation for 2025. So who is going to implement this money, which is a government? See, that government, I think, is too big for me, for my understanding, industry, trade, or whatever. You see, we have a very, look, people have been forgotten about tourism. I sit in Ghana here, and many people are coming to Ghana because of African continental trade. African continental trade is huge. They decided to set up in Ghana, thanks to government. They negotiated, they fought for it. If you look at the African continent, telecom is what I am. It's a $100 billion economy just to rebuild. You see, and many others.
So I'll let us come to what needs to be done. But Doc, let's go to, in the program, monetary and exchange rate policy. Now, it says that the Bank of Ghana's monetary policy goal is to bring inflation back to 6 to 10% target by end of the program. Notwithstanding the large monetary policy rate hikes and the increase in reserve requirement over the past year, inflation has remained high. This reflects the limited effectiveness of these monetary policy instruments in the face of large monetary financing, the government deficit, and supply shocks. The BOG is committed to continuing increasing its policy rate and maintain the tight monetary policy stance until inflation is on a firmly declining path. But that would obviously impact how much, industry borrows from the banks, isn't it? Wouldn't that affect how the economy would then expand?
Yeah, so, if you read that rendition, you read that government is, the art of balancing the management of the economy, because we know the Bank of Ghana primary role is to ensure price stability. In other words, they need to rein in inflation and make sure that our economy is on a sound footing. But central bank financing of central government has also created its own problem. In other words, it is one of the avenues for inflation because you are trying to implement tightening monetary policy. At the same time, you are financing the budget deficit or budget, shortfalls of central government. So what basically it seeks to suggest is that, look, let's stop in fact, as part of the prior actions, central bank is not financing central government anymore as part of the conditions we needed to meet before we have the money coming in. Now, but moving now into the medium term, say towards the end of the year and to the start of next year, we need to still do something about inflation. The Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank is meeting today, and I'm sure new measures is going to be announced. What basically it means is that, look, let's keep the policy rate a bit high. When you do that, any liquidity still in the system, excess to the extent that that money is not being invested in productive sectors of the economy but for consumption, would be taken out. It also means that policy rates of banks may likely go high. And it also means that industries may be affected within the context of all this whole discussion. But the long-run impact of that is that when you bring down inflation, then you start the cycle of having a policy rate coming down. Then you start the cycle of interest rate coming down, and banks can then borrow. So if you're in a crisis, first of all, try to manage the crisis. And what the central bank and the IMF is just basically proposing is that, look, in the meantime, manage the crisis. Let's have some stability. Let's tighten the policy a bit to have some stability, which is going to be more or less a difficult period for Ghanaians and industries. But the long impact or the long-term effect of it is that it will then tend to bring back some stability, business, like we had post-HIPIC. Okay, and then we even have post the IMF program that was recently concluded. Interest rates were coming down. People could go and borrow as low as 15% interest until this time it went to 35% lending rate. So that is basically now let's manage the crisis. Let's tighten the monetary policy. Let's stop zero financing of central bank to central government. And then when you have some stability, then you can then reduce or loosen some of this monetary policy in the form of quantitative easing to ensure that the economic grow.
What do you then say to people who argue that the inflation we are seeing is not really about you lowering monetary policy rate, but it's really about the exchange rate? When the exchange rate becomes better, then we'll see that inflation will reduce. How do you address people?
Yeah, so
I spoke to some business people who were telling me, they said, look, the inflation is not really about monetary rate being lowered.
Even when I listened to Dr. Said, he mentioned about the fact that the money is going to be one that is going to make our CD appreciate, which is true. But as I said, before the money even came in, some from November up to now, the CD has been appreciating against the dollar. Now, the question people ask, has government done anything different? I said, yes, government, the implementation of the Go for Oil policy has taken off some pressure from the demand that was on the Forex by BDCs. So that is one major intervention government did. And government was also able to say, because we've been arguing and people were rubbishing it because of policy. When we say that speculation have huge impact, very, very huge impact on the economy, especially on the Ghanaian cedi. That whenever we are going to have very catastrophic depreciation of the cedi, it is largely attributed to, what do you call it, it's speculation. Even though, speculation is also triggered by a lot of factors, confidence issues. It's also triggered by the fact that people go to the banks for hard currency and they are not getting. All those things also trigger speculation. But the fact is that, and I've always maintained that, the Ghanaian economy and the demand for dollar, and even in the context of a lockdown where global economies, global supply chains are still disrupted, the demand for hard currency couldn't have in itself triggered the sort of depreciation we had over the period. So in that regard, I tend to a bit disagree to the fact that, this money came in and it is supposed, it is the one going to help us with the management. In fact, it's going to support. But the government had already taken measures in terms of ensuring that there's some stability. Now, you raised an important question of how do we ensure that, because people raise and ensure that the inflation we are having is not basically because there's money in the system, but because there are several, of course, one aspect of the inflation, whenever there is fuel price increases, expect inflation to go high. Whenever you have food prices going high, expect inflation to go high. When you have PURC increasing utility tariffs, expect inflation to go high. So all these factors were working against or were conspiring against government in terms of how prices are going up. But, you know, if the major driver in the estimation of government was that if close to 60%, 60 to 70% of our basket is imported, okay, then definitely exchange rate cannot be, you cannot jettison the effect of exchange rate on the inflation we experience. Okay, that was one thing. So until that time, we transition towards a more, domestic production of goods and services, we'll still have this problem occurring, especially so when we have a shock of this nature that we had. So quite right, there were some internal factors. When domestic production of food, the finance agri minister had to set up some food market at the ministry in the midst of this crisis. So when we have all those problems occurring, then we have genuine concern to think that it is internal. But when you look at the whole basket, the basket is dominated by imported goods. So to that extent, inflation will be imported, and it's by importation, exchange rate, and global prices rise, and the global price rise is also going to account for the inflation that we experience within the country.
All right. You're still watching the AM show on the Joy News channel. I'm here in studio with Dr. Prince Kofi Kluchesen, who is former president of the AGI. He is also chairman for, I think, Celtel Networks Limited, and a pioneer in the IT industry of this country. I'm here with Dr. Kabiru Mahama as well. He is with the Vice President's office, and then so he would be doing a lot of the education from a government point of view, because I'm seeing that there's also going to be a reduction in transfers to MDAs as well. He would have to educate all of us to understand. But what's the impact of this also on banking sector? Because we realize that the banks lost a lot of revenue as a result of the debt exchange program. A banking consultant will be joining us shortly. Dr. Tiah Mahama will be joining us so that we can have a chat on that as well. Dr. Said is also with us. He is an economist based outside of the country. Doctor, you've listened to your colleague here, Dr. Mahama, explaining, what they intend to do in terms of even the monetary policy rate and how it won't, in the short term, it will really affect all of us. We'll go through some hardship, but in the long term, it will really be good for all of us. You feel that will be the way to go about it?
Well, I just had to make this correction. My name is Saad, not Saeed.
Oh, Saad. Okay.
Yes, Saad. Yes, Saad, not Saeed.
Okay.
Yes, so if you call me behind the scenes, I will accept, but because it's public, that's why I'm just making that correction. So
that's okay, sir.
Just to put that, yes. And coming back to the point, I do agree a little bit, but not entirely to what Dr. Mahama was saying. If you look at the monetary policy rate in particular with the Bank of Ghana, as at March 2023, raising it to 29.5%. You see, I always say that the Ghanaian economy is not like the US economy. It's not like the, developed economies like London and other places, right? So when you are dealing with the Ghanaian economy, you don't just need to transfer the textbook knowledge to apply. It doesn't work with Ghana. You really need to at least do things differently. Believe me, the IMF, the World Bank, most of their policies are basically what probably developed nations should be doing. Because let's say in the US, right? If I go to the shop to buy any product in US, they wouldn't look at me and sell it to me based on my personality. They would sell it based on the price of the item. So even if Bill Gates goes to the same market to buy that item, the price will still be the same. They won't say because he's Bill Gates, they will increase the price. But if you come to Ghana, our system is not like that. You go to the market queens or the traders will even sell you tomatoes based on how you are dressed. They will sell you onions based on how you are dressed. So we have a different level of inflation in Ghana, which is totally different from the regular textbook inflation that we all know. And until the government focuses its attention on that and sees that the inflation is not just as it's been defined in the textbook, but there is some element to the Ghanaian inflation. If you increase the monetary policy rate, you are going to make it difficult for small-scale businesses to borrow in the country. So in an attempt to reduce inflation in your economy, you end up collapsing the small-scale businesses who solely depend on imports. You understand? Because our inflation, even though it's still generated by higher prices, but some of them are deliberately done by our market queens and kings. So that is why I have a problem with number 3 on the document, which is on page 55, page 56. Because the more government increases the policy rate, the more Bank of Ghana increases the policy rate, we will end up crippling our small-scale businesses who depend on loans from the bank, because the interest rates will go up. And I'm even surprised that the industry association leaders are not speaking about it. They need to let the government know. There's nothing to be scared about this, because your businesses will be affected. Because you need the microfinance loan, you need the small scale loan, you need those loans to be able to pump into your businesses. So there is a bit of trade-off, and the government must realize this trade-off so we don't destroy our domestic economy more. Again, if you come back to the IMF, some of their conditionalities, I do have a problem again, especially if you come to like the energy sector and the cocoa sector that they are talking of. Why is the IMF not telling us to invest in rice production, to invest in maize production, to invest in grain and cereal, so that we'll be able to supply our nation with the basic foodstuffs that we will need? Are you following? Why is the IMF only focusing on cocoa sector? When you go to our basic markets, where a chunk of the inflation is coming from, do people eat cocoa? They don't. People are more focused on the rice that they are going to buy. People are more focused on the bag of corn that they are going to buy. The day-to-day bread and butter issues. Why is the IMF not suggesting to government to improve the agricultural sector to be able to stabilize food in Ghana so that we wouldn't have to import food more? So at this point in time, the government itself really needs to sit back. Like I said, the IMF report is very beautiful, but how does it meet the day-to-day butter and bread issues of the Ghanaian, the average Ghanaian, who doesn't even think about international reserves, how much Ghana has, who will only get up how to get from Dansuma to Agroecology or whatever. Transport first. What is government going to do about that? Rent. A landlord will increase rental payments and blame it on inflation, blame it on the dollar. Yet his transaction with the tenant has nothing to do with the dollar. These are the basic challenges that are facing the average Ghanaian on the street, who will not even care about how much IMF is giving Ghana. So my whole point is that the Ghanaian government must shift away from all these beautiful policies it has put on paper and actually study the economy, the local economy, and see what are the day-to-day bread and butter issues that it could put measures on. You understand? That it could put measures on. That even if the IMF doesn't give us money, at least we will be able to survive.
Okay.
Because look, since 1966, this is Ghana's 18th IMF bailout. So if IMF was really good for us, I'm not saying they are not good for the economy, but if IMF really supported or salvaged the Ghanaian economy, we wouldn't be going back to the 18th time. I follow my whole dreams. And again, even if you go back to the IMF own report, go to page 35. The IMF own projections of our public debt, it will tell you that there is a likelihood Ghana will be going back for another 19th IMF bailout immediately after this. And it doesn't matter which government comes next, even if it is the NDC government that comes next. If they are not careful, they will go back to the IMF. Because our debt projections means that by 2025 onwards, we will still be in the debt distress, because you are talking of debt to GDP ratio of 90.2 all the way to 86%. So it still doesn't address, in the long run, it still doesn't address our debt distress situation as a country. And that is where policymakers, like I keep saying, they need to focus on the domestic economy. They need to really look into and see how to run the economy totally separate from the textbook definitions that we have. That is the only way we will be able to stop ourselves from constantly going back onto the IMF. Because right now it's like we are in a cycle. We destroy our economy through GDP, collapse banks, then we go back again, then we come back, okay, we are now going to establish a fund to stop this bank. So it's like you are just in a cycle.
In a cycle.
So why must you keep for over 60 years? Why must a country keep being in such a cycle? It means that policymakers haven't studied the Ghanaian economy.
Okay, all right.
Textbook economics is good. We all learn it. But every economy is different. That is my view.
Okay, grateful.
Until you know your economy, you can never get solution.
Okay, thank you. So that Dr. Saad Idrisu there. Now, Kabiru, let me come to you here. Now, in the document, it says primary expenditure will be reduced by 2 percentage points of GDP, mainly by lowering capital expenditures through project reprioritization, including providing around 0.9% of GDP of savings, containing the wage bill by limiting wage increases and hiring. You would have to explain to us what that means. Also, rationalizing goods and services spending, reducing transfers to statutory funds through a reduction of the cap on the share of revenue that they can receive. These measures can be supported by steps to strictly tighten expenditure controls of both NDAs and statutory funds. What do you mean by this?
Yeah, before I just quickly, let me try to agree and disagree with Dr. Saad a bit when he mentioned that this country's architecture government has to consider. Look, we all admit that in a highly informal economy where the economy is not captured in the books of the government, there's likely to be this acts of people pricing arbitrarily, people pricing, using their own discretion. And we've lamented that when the president noted that in one of his speeches, I think no one came to his aid when it was attacked by everyone, that he had asked the market queen to be considered, that he's now blaming the market queens. But we all admit that this is the real problem of the Ghanaian economy. How will policy address that? Policy will address that by the steps we take to formalize the economy. So government understands that, and government is trying to do that. I agree with him that, look, no economies are the same. Every economy has its own peculiar circumstances and nature, and you need to understand your economy and take measures to address them. So, and also the point about IMF, going back to IMF, you see, the policy objective is to reduce the risk of debt distress from high risk to moderate. So that policy objective is clear in the document. So 86% of debt to GDP, is something of a moderate risk. So it is not to suggest that the program within 3 years, which is not long-term to even state with, okay, that is the very short-term policy framework or tenor, is to reduce the program, the debt to a moderate risk. So that's why it is around still 86. But that is also notwithstanding the fact that government is trying to limit even borrowing. So I just want to explain that a bit and then come to the substantive point about government limiting hiring and also wage bill. You know, when you read that...
if you could just hold on for me on that same question, I'll come back to you to take. But let me join Dr. Tiah Mahama, who is a banking consultant. He's joining us on phone. Doc, grateful for you to join us here. Now, we understand that the DDEP is deemed to have cost banks some 37 billion Ghana cedis. Do banks have any redemption from this particular arrangement between Ghana and the IMF after you've perused this document?
Thank you very much, and good morning to your cherished listeners. You know, we find ourselves with these losses. This year, all the banks have captured most of the impairments, which is about 19.4 billion. And by the calculation, using even the 16% discount factor, the total should have been 37.5. So we left with 17.1 thereabouts. The question is that the document is advising all the banks that will fall short of the capital to be seriously looking for capital, and it is in the document. He said every bank should submit its individual capital plan with a time bound to Bank of Ghana for approval by September 2023. What is on the ground is that if you look at the losses and even the financial stability, which is supposed to address some of these solvency, you begin to find out that if the banks were to capture all the losses as is being required and bring your capital plan for approval, I think that there is a lot of hurdles to be cleared, because I'm not sure whether the shareholders will be able to do this within this short space of time. But it's a requirement in the document 41. If you read 2021-41, it is clearly stated there. The only hope that I think the banks, especially the indigenous banks, would hope and pray that the stability fund of 1.5 billion set up would give them some space to be able to support them for the time being. But if you were to go to the shareholders at the moment to tell them to bring this money, it's not going to be easy at all. We all saw from the financial sector reform in 2018 and 2019 up to 2020. It took some of the banks, even the govt had to come in to support the 400 million. But if you look at the capital adequacy ratios that has been produced, you could see that even with the first tranche, that losses that has been captured, some banks have negative capital. Some banks have negative capital. So if you capture the whole lot, because there are outstanding that has to be captured, if you capture the whole lot, some of the banks would, especially the local banks, because if you have read from Bloomberg, all the South African banks are getting ready for recapitalization. And I know the Nigerian banks are putting in plans, serious plans to recapitalize the banks in Ghana.
Okay.
So I'm only praying that the stability fund will be adequate, temporary, to support them, so that it gives a longer period for the shareholders to come in. Because what has happened is not the fault of the shareholders. It is not the fault of the shareholder. You were selling a product, and you didn't say caveat emptor. A buyer must be aware. In Latin, we say caveat emptor, caveat emptor. A buyer must be aware. If that clause was attached to the bond, you cannot blame those who bought it. But if there were no clause to it, and you decide to restructure it to bring such a huge losses, then you should actually have a JOJO, agree with them, and give them space, especially the private-owned banks, domestic banks in Ghana. They have done well. They have contributed very well. But the situation they find themselves now, they need to be given a space. And it is my prayer that the Stability Fund will be adequate, at least to give them a briefing space, so that maybe their shareholders will be preparing. Because if you look at the plan, it says that you must bring your plan by the June ending. Every individual bank must bring his plan, and then it should be approved by September ending. So the shareholders are now, the board of the directors are now going to sit down to capture the losses that has hit them. Previously, what we have today, or the end of the year, was only 19.4 by their calculation and their publication. So there is an outstanding that has to be captured. And so you're supposed to capture all the losses and then draw your plan how you're going to recapitalize the bank over the period. And I'm saying that if the Stability Fund is well set up and it is in the document, it is support an early capitalization by the GFS. And if they do that and they give a briefing space to the shareholders, it will help them.
Okay. I hope this time around, from what we are seeing, we're not going to see any bank collapse as a result of this.
Well, the document is trying to tell us that the Stability Fund is so important. And especially, I'm always referring to the local the indigenous bank, because the foreign banks, a bank like one of the banks, he captured the whole losses. Boom. He didn't even wait for them to structure it. The other ones have been given 4 years time space. But the one bank has captured the losses, and his capital adequacy is more than the required 16%. That bank is free. But the others, there's another one, Nigerian bank, who also captured the whole loss. But the rest has skilled it in such a way that maybe they've given them 4-year period. But suddenly, you're being told to bring a capital plan. You need to capture the impending losses and then draw a plan how you're going to. That is what I'm saying, that the CGF, the GFS, if it's done very well, it will be able to mitigate some of these things, the solvency and the challenges we're talking about.
Okay. But my question was that we don't foresee any collapse, right?
Well, if what I've seen in the document, if it's well established and planned very well, we may not.
Okay.
We may not, because I think that the fund and Bank of Ghana have sat down to do the testing, scenario testing, and so possibly saw that if the GSF, the fund, is set up, it will be able to mitigate that. So I don't foresee that. I don't foresee that.
Okay.
But you see, my worry is that if you look at the physical cost, you said a possible physical cost of this sector is about 2.6% of GDP. I believe when we started this game, I have been saying it, and I've been saying it over and over again. I have never seen any document that even talked about the cost of the DDEP to the financial sector. And I was wondering why in the whole country we have to wait for the IMF document for us to see even the cost. Because if we knew the cost, then you should have planned. The impact should have been planned earlier. Because I started talking about this in, I think, 5 months ago in one of my presentations at George. I said we're going to have a serious impact. But at that time, people didn't understand what we were saying. Because even let me read something to you. It said the estimated NPV reduction is on 16 to 18% discount factor. Whereas, if you look at the bonds, the effective coupon rate was 19.3. So you can see that even that one has been varied a little to reduce the cost to the bank. If we have used the original 19.3%, insolvency would have been serious in the banking sector.
Okay, Doc.
So by varying it to the lower end, which is people have used the 16%, there is still a loss to be done. But as I said, I have never seen anybody. That is what my worry is, that nobody has asked this question.
Okay.
It is until the fund saying the possible physical cost of the possible is not the final possible.
Okay.
Will be up to 2.6% of the GDP. If we knew it was going to be the cost like that, there were no alternatives.
Doc, I'm grateful. Thank you so much. Dr. Richmond Etuahene is a banking consultant there. Well, let me come back to the studio. Kabiru, when you were speaking, you were really shaking.
I think that there were certain things you mentioned about the DDE and the impact of the DDE on banking sector. In fact, government knew of it. Government had discussed it. I was privy to a discussion on the possible impact of the DDE on the financial sector.
Okay.
And if you read page 20 of the report, you realize that there's report copiously stated that Ghana's financial sector was relatively robust.
Yeah, he made mention to it, but he was saying that...
I'm coming to the genesis of that statement in that report, following the banking sector cleanup. That the banking sector cleanup had ensured robustness in our financial sector, but the DDE has potential impact. As far back November last year, I was privy to a discussion by the central bank with the central government, Minister of Finance, giving forbearances, suggesting some forbearances or regulated forbearances in order to curtail some of the impact of the DDE program. I'm privy to the discussion that government wanted to set up the Financial Stability Fund, which they had approached the World Bank to make sure that they commit fund, and the World Bank had committed 250 million, and AFDB is also committing some 100 million to it. So government had contemplated it. If doctor wasn't aware, was not privy to the discussion, government was well aware that, look, the program we are doing, government was aware that 30 to 50% of the exposures of these banks are by way of government securities, by way of money they have lent to government, by way of bond. So government understood this. It isn't the report that came to highlight it.
But do we know how much it was going to cost? Because his point was that we didn't know how much it was going to cost the banking sector.
We knew how much it was going to cost. In fact, the exposure of each bank was different. And that is why even in the stability fund, it was proposed that we have to use a criteria of depending on the different exposure level. You cannot use a blanket, a one-fit-in-all approach for all the banks. So that was done. Analysis.
Okay, so how much
analysis. I will not be able to give you the figures off it. So that has to just note on that.
Okay.
You had mentioned additional...
Exactly. Lowering capital expenditure through project reprioritization, containing the wage bill by limiting wage increases and hiring, because a lot of people have issues with this one, and also reducing transfer to statutory funds through a reduction of the cap of the share of revenue that they can receive.
Yeah, so the cap was basically, the proposal was that instead of 25%, it's going to 17.5% of statutory funding, and that was presented to Parliament as part of the 2023 fiscal policy. So most of these things that you find in here are contained in the budget. By way of limiting expenditure on capital and reprioritization, what basically government seeks to do is that we have a lot of development projects going, a lot of infrastructure projects ongoing. Their flagship program. Let's focus between now and the next 2-3 years on finishing this project. Let us not go to install or to commence new projects where commencement certificates will be given for the start of new projects, unless those projects are crucial to ensure, emergencies. For example, if a bridge, say from a particular village to another, is, pulled off by waters. Okay, you need to put that. Those are emergency projects, except that government doesn't intend to commence any major infrastructure project. And if government does that, some 0.9% of savings of GDP will be made. Government also intends to moderate the rate with which we increase salaries of workers. Moderating means that, for instance, of course, this is even related to the inflation. If you have your inflation coming down and cost of living, cost of cola, is associated with inflation, right? If you are able to contain inflation, it means that the rate of increasing your cola is also going to come down. So what basically government seeks to do by that particular statement is that, look, we will want to moderate how we increase salaries of public sector workers. Of course, government cannot do without increasing, but discussion with labor and to ensure that cost of living is in tandem with the economic situation is what government is going to use. Two, government doesn't intend to create new institutions where it would demand that we would hire more people to fill in this institution. So the savings that is going to be made from these two strong measures, limiting the increment of salaries or wages, and also limiting the recruitment. If I was planning to recruit 1,000 people, government can have it to 500 people. Okay, and that saving is going to be about 0.5% of GDP. So together, that is what has been presented in that state.
So it doesn't mean that there will be freezing in employment.
There will not be freeze on employment. In fact, if you read the document on social sector, education and health have been considered so crucial, and that there's going to be even enhanced expenditure in this area. It means that we'll hire nurses. It means that we'll go on to recruit teachers because of the necessity and then the importance of these particular sectors, as it were. But what it essentially means that government would not want to create new institutions. You remember the 2023 budget, the finance minister mentioned of a net freeze in employment, which made the headlines. And people misunderstood it to mean that there will be total ban on recruiting new people. But thankful the IMF policy document is out, and the policy document clearly says that, look, you would have to limit wage increase.
Okay.
So this is what we just have to do in that regard.
Thank you. Doc, just about wrapping up, what will be your last word? What do you think that we should do going forward?
No, I think that, like I said earlier on, this is done already, it's finished. What we need for industry in the private sector, I think that there are three major key ministries, that industry, tourism, trade, and also agriculture, which is everybody's talking about. So there might be that kind of an engagement very, very quickly with these three sectors, which will be able to lead in the growth, agri, trade and industry, and also tourism. So that whatever we can do to move to plan B as to future revenue. Because as Doc is saying, it's a debt. How do we pay the debt? So if all the probabilities in the document does not work, we need to fall on the private sector. So that's what we're going to do. So I think we need to have to encourage them going forward and see what we can do.
All right, grateful to you, Dr. Kluchesen. Let me go to Dr. Saad. Dr. Saad, so just about wrapping up, in the next minute, what will be your concluding remark on this discussion?
Let me just go back to what Dr. Richmond was saying. I think Dr. Richmond was a bit charitable to the government, or probably not to scare Ghanaians. But if we don't get the 1.5 stability fund, $1.5 billion stability fund by July, we cannot avoid a banking crisis. It's inevitable. So at least the government must be told straightforward to be aware. And you see, people seem to confuse the whole thing. In actuality, we need $4.5 billion for the Ghanaian economy, not just $3 billion. Because the $3 billion is from the IMF, which will help with the macro stability and all that. But we need another $1.5 billion for the Ghana Financial Stability Fund. So those are two separate entities we are dealing with. But since the IMF issue has taken the whole entire conversation, that people are not focusing on the 1.5 billion financial stability fund for the banks. And if you go back to the Bloomberg reports and all that, it's clearly stated how much losses these banks have made. Since 1993, some of them have been made losses. They have all recorded losses.
Okay.
So if government doesn't act fast enough to help them stabilize through the fund, then definitely what will be the next target? We will have a banking crisis. It's obvious. And we shouldn't play worse with this. We should just let the government know straightforward. And again, like I keep saying, we really need to let the government, put the government on its toes enough, because we have seen from 2007 all the way till now what the government said it would do, and at the end, it doesn't get it done.
Okay, all right.
You understand? Because if the government has received over $40 billion in resources to date, it hasn't been able to salvage the economy. What magic should we expect that the $3 billion should do? And I think we should all focus on the government, scrutinize it well to make sure that it actually delivers what it says it will.
I'm very grateful to you, Doc, for joining. Dr. Saad Idrisu is an economist. In studio, Dr. Prince Kofi Kluchesen. He is a former president of AGI and the current chair is the board for the Chamber of Tourism Industry Ghana Advisory Board, which I'm sure you still are. And then Dr. Kabiru Mahama is from the Vice President's office. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us here on the AM show.
Thank you very much.
All right, so I'm sure this discussion about the IMF will still continue wherever we are. Let's continue talking about it and see how we can move Mother Ghana forward. There's more on the show. Stay with us. We'll be back with more.
Hello there, very good morning to you. Thank you so much for staying on the AM show. Now to our next conversation. Colleges of education in Ghana have undergone significant transformation since their establishment under the 2012 Act 847. Now our checks reveal there are infrastructural deficits in almost all of these colleges in Ghana. Now most of the structures are more than 60 years old. At the Baga College of Education, for example, a 400-bed capacity ladies' hostel has been abandoned for more than a decade. At Agroecology College of Education, work on a 300-bed hostel facility has been stalled since 2015. At NGA College of Education in Wa, a 3-story building hostel has been left to rot away with the building caving in from the second floor. Today, we tackle this particular issue. I've been joined by Professor Mohammed Salifu. He is Director General of the Ghana Tertiary Education Commission, and Larry Agbado, Editor, Teacher Education Journal. We've also got our very own Dr. Peter Anti, Executive Director, Institute for Education Studies, and Professor Samuel Atintono, National President of Preeclampsia. Let me start with you, Larry, and it's a pleasure to have you here. Over the years, we've seen issues raised about infrastructure when it comes to education, but usually the focus is on senior high schools. Now we are learning of many projects in colleges of education across the country that have been left, some as old as decades. From where you sit working with the journal, what has been the fight in times past and even currently to get this situation solved?
All right, thank you very much, Benny, and good morning to your good self and then your cherished viewers across the world. Yes, just as you rightly said, this is not the first time we're having this conversation on infrastructure deficit in the colleges. We've had this conversation on several occasions. The situation seems to be the same across all the colleges. Yes, you made mention of significant infrastructure improvement in our senior high schools as a result of the free senior high school policy that was introduced. But one thing we have forgotten as a nation is that the products of these senior high schools, majority of them end up finding themselves in these 4 to 6 public colleges of education for various reasons. You know, one major thing that attracts most of these people to the colleges is the payment of the trainee teachers allowance. But here is the case, we've not been able to do anything to improve on the infrastructure situation in the colleges. The same infrastructure we had that was used in running the certificate programs in the past to the diploma programs, the same infrastructure we are having currently that we have been using running the degree program, the Bachelor of Education program. And the Bachelor of Education program is a 4-year program, not like the diploma program that was 2 years stay on campus for students and then 1 year off campus. With the new Bachelor of Education program, students are expected to spend the entire 4 year on campus, but we don't have the needed infrastructure to accommodate all of them. So the infrastructure situation in the colleges is still the same. There has not been any significant improvement. Government recently awarded contracts of 300-bed capacity hostel projects for each college. That was last year. The projects were expected to be handed over August this year, but as we speak, most of the colleges have not even seen the faces of the contractor yet. Some also that have seen the contractors' projects is still moving at a very slow pace. And you know what happened last year where there was a cut, more or less, on the admission numbers into the colleges of education as a result of this infrastructure. So the situation is still the same. We are hoping that stakeholders, we have the Director General of DTEC on the line. We are hoping that at least we hear something good from him.
So, Larry, when you speak to, I don't know what the situation like is in colleges of education, like it is in other universities or other tertiary institutions where there is a student representative council that would usually push for the interest of students. Do we have a similar situation in colleges of education? And what has been the role of student leadership in trying to get this matter resolved?
The students have over the years cried on several occasions to government and other key stakeholders on the need for the infrastructure to be improved. Professor Salifu will attest to the fact that he has received several probably appeals or calls from the leadership of the Teacher Trainees Association of Ghana on the need for them to improve the infrastructure situation. But the major stakeholder here is government. You see, the priority government had given to the senior high schools in the past year to address the infrastructure. If the colleges had just probably 40 or 50% of such attention, I'm not sure we'll be here having this conversation on infrastructure in the colleges. Because at the start of the degree program, one question we should ask ourselves was, did we factor in the issue of infrastructure, knowing very well that the new degree program was going to be a 4-year program? Did we factor in addressing the infrastructure while the program was going to be running? That for the past 4, 5, 6 years, we've not seen any significant infrastructure improvement in the colleges. So this has been the situation. The power lies with government to kind of put some priority on the situation in the colleges. If you look at the attention or the priority they've kept on the payment of the allowance, if that same attention should be given to infrastructure, I think we'll go a long way to improve the situation in the colleges.
I'll have you hold on for me, Larry, and let me welcome Professor Mohammed Salifu, Director General of the Ghana Tertiary Education Commission. Good morning to you, Prof, and thank you for joining us this morning. I don't know what your sentiments or thoughts are. Larry just hinted at less priority being given to colleges of education as compared to senior high schools. We know that this government in particular has been very forceful and has invested so much when it comes to the senior high school education. In fact, in conversations about the review of the senior high school free senior high school program and moving forward, there were many who raised concerns about the overflow, because government had touted or had said that one of the benefits of the free senior high school policy was the enrollment of more children into senior high schools. Here we are, colleges of education, one of the many opportunities for young people to further their studies, and we are struggling to find them good accommodation and other infrastructure to aid in those studies. Prof, before I take your comments, let me give you, for example, in the Bagabaga College of Education, we understand that there is a project that has stalled, and unfortunately certain miscreants have taken over the facility, and in addition to not having a place or adequate accommodation, students are also worried because they are at risk of being robbed or harmed. For you, what is the major cause of this problem? Is it also a lack of attention, or there could be more?
Okay, thank you very much for having me, and greetings to Larry and the rest of the panel. I don't think it's lack of attention. Larry has worked with us on the reform for teacher education, and a lot of the consequential things, infrastructure in this particular case that needed to be done. He knows that we've had specific, plans that we put in place to address that. It's not as if we didn't anticipate the numbers going up, and it's not as if we don't know what we are supposed to do. We have plans. We've started some investments in the area. He alluded to that, the 300 bed capacity hostels. But the experience has been variable. You made mention of the facility at Bagabaga College of Education. There are one or two others, littered all over the tertiary space, not just for colleges of education, but even in some of the universities. Because there was a time when commitments on the govt fund were done in, literally haphazard manner, uncontrolled way, in which the fund's cash flow wasn't able to address that. The govt fund management has since put in place a certain structured process of getting financial clearance, and getting this project properly planned so that they can be dealt with. If we haven't made significant progress in the colleges, it's not because there's no priority on it. It's just simply because there are a lot of things to do, even though we understand the connections. There's a constraint on the resources to deal with these things. So we tackle them one at a time and in some sequential manner.
But
as you
Prof,
said,
does that, sorry to interject, Prof, but does that not suggest that there are more things that have your attention or that have been prioritized over this? Because if you say there are many things to sort out, and that's why, for example, in Bagabaga, since 2009, that's 14 years. I mean, what at all will make you stall a project for that long? Doesn't your response then suggest that indeed it is a problem of priority?
Okay, so that I just try to explain that point. There's a history to projects being stalled in tertiary education institutions for that period of time. And that history goes back to the point where there wasn't enough coordination and planning between the user agencies, sometimes who could get the project started under the guise of being funded under IGF, only to be rolled on onto the government, GET fund. And sometimes they even started by regional administrations, and then later, only later, GET fund gets to know about that. So there's a history to that. And last year, GET fund went to Parliament to get approval for a plan to deal with those. So those are being on a separate track. What we are talking about now is the one that we planned in terms of addressing the specific challenge of getting infrastructure to deal with the 4-year program as opposed to 3 years when we had a diploma program in the colleges of education. So there's a plan. The plan has started. Unfortunately, I think the contractors haven't been as cooperative as we anticipated because some have made significant progress. Initially, they were not too sure. You heard Larry refer to the time when we did the awards. This was sometime last year around May, June, July. And you know, between that time and as we speak, there has been some volatility in our economy. A number of challenges have come up, and some contractors, even though they came bidding, tendering for the project, and giving you assurances that they had credit lines to progress the works, even if we didn't give them mobilization. After getting the job, they sit back and they are wondering whether they are going to be paid if they invest their resources into it. We gave them assurances, but it appears many of them prefer to wait and see. And as we speak now, those who have made significant progress and presented certificates have in fact received payment for that. Last 2 weeks or so, my head of projects is on the call. He may give you further details on that. We called all the contractors and consultants to get a sense of the update, and we've given warning letters to people who haven't made significant progress. And we've indicated that this is not a project, that is business as usual. If you are not prepared to do the work, as urgent as we have stressed the need to you, then we'll probably have to get another contractor who is prepared to do it.
Professor Samuel Atintono is also here with us. He's national president of the Principals of Colleges of Education, the Conference of Principals of Colleges of Education, and he joins us this morning to also share his thoughts. So I've just referenced the Bagabaga situation, but there's also the Dambai College of Education, where two major infrastructure, two major projects have been left abandoned. There is the situation in Agroecology College of Education, and there the Student Affairs Officer tells us that the school was forced to convert a science lab into a female's dormitory, and that's Father Angelo Elijah Opoku. In Enchi College of Education, now this is where it gets interesting. In that College of Education, staff are competing with students for accommodation. In Fosu College of Education, the Vice Principal, Sylvester Donko, is unhappy that a 500 capacity female hostel has stalled for years. We are told that this has forced the school to reduce the number of females that are enrolled into the school. Lastly, there's the St. Joseph College of Education, where Again, female students are unhappy that a two-story building block has been left uncompleted. We've heard reasons for this. Professor Samuel Atintono, do you think there is any justifiable cause why we must subject students of colleges of education to this? For some, it's been decades and more. Is there anything that justifies this?
First of all, good morning to you and good morning to Professor Salfo and Larry, and of course to Joy and my colleagues, principals who are listening to this program, for the opportunity to have this conversation. I think to say it is justifiable or not might not be the issue. For us as principals, it is hampering work on campus. If you listen to Larry very well, what's happening currently is we bring on board 2 cohorts of students at a time, partly or mainly because of the lack of infrastructure on campus. Clearly, I think Prof. Salfu has given the reasons, and it is something that is a worry. And for us, even though there have been some efforts to augment the infrastructure, I think it has been so slow, and we need to actually pay much more attention to the colleges. Because if you get to the colleges, you would see a very huge disparity between the infrastructure in the colleges of education and that of even some secondary schools. So this is where the problem is. If you listen to Prof. Salfo, some problems were at GET-FUND that led to where we are. That is in terms of the management, in terms of uncoordinated projects that are implemented in some colleges without recourse to either GTEC or GET-FUND itself. And then they now abandon them for over 10 years. If you get back to those infrastructure, you would notice that technically you have to redeploy so much money in order to bring them back or even to complete them, which is not a good thing. Now, the allocation of GET-FUND to the College of Education itself, when they became tertiary institutions, is so small. It is based on number of students, and the number of students of the colleges are usually not many. What it then means is that once we have converted them into tertiary education institutions, we ought to have a special kind of arrangement to augment the infrastructure. That is where we haven't done much. Because every year, if you take a college and then the allocation is about 1 million or 2 million, it will not help. But I'm happy last year or last 2 years, as Prof. Salfu said, they now decided that there should be a special attention. That's why they are constructing the 300-bed capacity for each of the 46 colleges. I think there are 43 because 3 of them already have something on the ground. So the agreement was that they will not go in there.
Sorry, Prof. I need to interject here. So there's been a decision to put up 300-bed capacity dormitories or hostels in all the colleges of education. What's happened? Yeah. What is the plan for those that have already been started and stalled? Are we leaving them to rot? We understand that some of them are already caving in, which raises issues of financial loss. What are we doing with those ones?
Yeah, I think when they decided to roll out this new project for the colleges, what they did was, if you already have started one, then you ought to talk to GTEC to see some way forward. For example, Presbyterian Women's College of Education, that's a Buri, they had started a women's a hostel capacity of about 400. And because of that, they said they will not get the 300. So the negotiation is that they would rather dovetail in this project and then complete it for them. I do also know that Methodist College of Education and Tumu College of Education also have similar projects. So working with a technical person, that's at GTEC, Tony, he probably will be talking to that. We have an agreement that they should rather continue instead of abandon them. But the other one that had started before this new arrangement, we have been asked to get details of all these projects so that GET-FUND will have a look at them to probably complete them. Because some have been there more than 10, 12, 15 years and so on. And structurally, they now even have some defects that might want more money to be plowing. But what basically Preeclampsia is saying, or from our perspective, is that we ought to have a more special attention to the colleges. Otherwise, we will continue to have this problem that we have no infrastructure. It is not only even we are talking about accommodation. It's not only the accommodation. If you come to any of the colleges now, we have serious problems with our science labs. They are not in a shape that you can use to teach properly. We try as much as we can, but the IGF is not enough to put them back. So again, we need to look at that component. ICT infrastructure is also another serious challenge, which would also require that from Get Fund perspective, we ought to devote some resources to put them in a shape that we can actually support academic work.
Prof, so in previous times, apart from this initiative that GTEC has agreed to sponsor, it was IGF that was being used to put up these facilities?
Yes, it's IGF, but Get Fund has actually been supporting. But what they do, as I said, was the vote is normally not too much. They have constructed an auditorium for some colleges. They have also done some library that was quite long ago. Accra College of Education, when I came, in fact, the voted money, we constructed a 3-story lecture hall and office complex. So it's one project at a time, but usually these things will not cope up with where we are going. For example, 4 years now, the hostel, why we are focusing on that is because we have realized that when they were 3 years, with 1 year batch on teaching practice, we can manage with the 2-year batches. We stretch it to the 4-year, and then for 4 years now, we are graduating the students. We still don't have anything to augment. That's where the problem is. So I think I heard in your presentation where some colleges, we have to be very innovative by converting some kind of structures to just manage with what we can do in terms of if you have a building that's a classroom and probably you want to put a student there, with the hope that these new hostel things will help us. We need to actually speed up and give more resources to the colleges.
Right. Dr. Peter Anti is Executive Director of the Institute for Education Studies. I'm pleased to have you here, Doc. And I have just been going through how much government spends on teacher trainee allowances annually, a rough estimate. And over the years, since the reintroduction, of course, quite some huge amounts. Okay, so in 2022, government projected to spend a total of 128.3 billion cedis, right? In 2019, Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta stated that 48,000 teacher trainees at the time in November, when he was given reading the budget for the next year, had so far been paid 532 million cedis in allowances. So you can see an increase there from 2019. In 2022, there was an estimation of more. Now, I'm just wondering how much of an improvement to infrastructure these monies could offer. What is your thinking? There are those who say that this whole teacher trainee allowance reintroduction was a populist approach. It shouldn't have happened. And there are those who say there are real needs that are being met by the allowances. What is your take?
Well, good morning and greetings to the panel, Prof. Salis, and the others. Larry. Yes, I'm glad that Larry is here because just a year ago, we had this conversation with the teacher trainees and other stakeholders. And I remember when I was speaking on innovative financing, I said that one of the ways that we'll be able to deal with this problem of infrastructure deficit in our colleges of education would be to ensure that we swap the monies that we are using to give to these students as allowances and channel them to the provision of infrastructure in these colleges. The difficulty with this conversation is that the teachers, the student teachers themselves do not agree. And that becomes problematic because the government is not willing to do this. Of course, we know that they have been classified as tertiary institutions and the student loan is available for them to use. But the minister is not in support of this because he was at the program and he made a statement to that effect. The students themselves do not agree that they do not deserve these allowances. And that makes the discussion in that light very difficult. But for me, I'm very clear in my mind that that is the way to go. We need to expedite the provision of infrastructure in our colleges of education. I sit here and I listen to Dr. Samuel Atintonu speak, and I get worried because you are training these people to go to the field to come and teach in the classroom. They need the best kind of education, in fact, quality one, to be able to understand the concepts and help them to impact when they go out. But these are the people who do not have the requisite science labs. They do not have potent ICT infrastructure. So what are we giving them? What are we giving them? Because at the end of the day, these teachers will not be able to give what they do not have. And that is why the conversation on this swap is very important. One of the concerns that were raised that day was that how certain are we that if we ask or government decides to stop the payment of these allowances, that money would be channeled into the provision of infrastructure. That question was asked forcefully by the students. And I remember I indicated that this is about commitment and holding government to their words in terms of what we think that money can be used for. And if we have a very well laid down plan, we'll be able to track the usage of these monies into the provision of infrastructure in our colleges of education, because that is paramount as compared to the other things that we are spending money on. And the way things are going, it means that there is lack of efficiency in spending, and that would pose a bigger problem to the training of quality teachers in our country.
And so roughly, these teachers are paid about, the last time I checked, a little over 500 cedis, right? Larry, Peter, can you confirm? A monthly allowance of about 500 cedis?
No, so they are paid 400 cedis a month. 400
cedis a month as allowance. And Larry, in your discussions that Dr. Peter has just cited, do you get a sense that the students would rather prefer to have those monies in their pockets than have a decent place to live and other structural issues taken care of in the school?
It's quite a mixed one on the part of the students. As Dr. Anti said, last year when we had the national dialogue, it was quite a divided one because the students were still bent on receiving their allowance at the expense of seeing infrastructure improvement in the colleges. Their concern also was that what is the assurance that even if government should suspend the payment of the allowance today to say that they are going to use such funds to improve infrastructure, what is the assurance that government will commit to that? That was the concern they also raised, and I think they also had a case over there into improving infrastructure. But as a whole, I think we've come of age where we should be able to take certain bold decisions. If you listen to Professor Tintonu, you realize that you go to a college like Wesley College of Education, which is over 100 years, and they don't have a functional science laboratory. Now, these science labs are expected to be used to teach these student teachers the practicals they're supposed to go through, so that when they also go out there, they can also take pupils through it. And at Wesley College of Education, their science lab, the building has been completed. And for over, if I'm not mistaken, for over 6, 7, 8 years, just the final works that are left in it, like finishing it with the science equipment and the rest, for over 6, 7 years now, that has been left. So it's quite a serious issue. I heard you ask Professor Tintonu how we are leaving the old projects aside and then starting new ones all over again. What do we do to the old ones? And you realize that if we should show some little commitment to the old projects, we'll probably not be having these conversations. It may even be the case that the new projects that are coming up now will even just come to complement the existing ones. And we've been having these conversations for the past 4 years, since the introduction of the BF program. And as I said, we just need some commitment, some attention, some priority on the part of government and stakeholders on the colleges of education.
Let me quickly find out. Sorry, we would have to be wrapping up shortly. But from your end, Professor Mohammed Salifu, is that commitment going to come? You are Director General of the Ghana Tertiary Education Commission. Is that commitment going to come? Are we going to see these 300 bed capacity dormitories or hostels you're putting up across the colleges of education? Are we going to see them completed? When is your projected deadline?
Okay,
hello,
thank
Prof.
you very
Salifu?
much. So
Right.
those projects, yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, so those projects will be delivered. As I said in my initial comments, there have been some hiccups in the implementation, largely arising from concerns that the contractors have raised about payments and all that. We have engaged them. We understand their concerns. Now, the key thing is between last year and now, because of the volatility in prices of materials, they want an adjustment to the rates that they quoted in the original tender. There's a formula in the project, in the contract to deal with that. But because the volatility stretched it beyond those limits, we need to have a conversation. We've started that with GovT. So that will be addressed. But contractors need to get back to site because there's a commitment to pay their certificates as and when they raise.
So, Prof, as we speak now, there is no projected timeline for this project to be completed.
No, there has always been a projected timeline from the beginning. These are meant to be delivered in 18 months. So they have slackened in terms of their progress. So they will be delivered sometime between May and August next year. That is the understanding.
And when it comes to...
it's being dealt with.
All right, Prof. And when it comes to the other things like Larry just cited, having to furnish science laboratories, because, I mean, this government says education is a priority, and that's why there's been so much money pumped into the free senior high school program. But I just wonder how education can be a priority if we neglect those who facilitate the education. And I'm talking about the teachers who are being trained here. Because I just wonder how you can expect a teacher who is going to train another person to give up their best when they haven't received the best. So what is being done in that regard as well?
Okay, so I appreciate your viewpoint, and I think the same thing. But my point is that I think Larry and the rest of them have oversimplified the matter. Yes, we do recognize that there are isolated cases where the situation is quite bad. But the experience is variable. There are many places where they are much, much better than that. So we need to be a little more optimistic in looking at this problem and dealing with it, given the commitments that have been made, than cast it as if this is some basket case. It's a case of a glass half full rather than half empty.
Let me find out from Professor Samuel Atintono. Sorry to cut in, Prof. If he agrees with your perspective. Prof, you are National President of the Conference of Principals of Colleges of Education. Larry has painted a picture. Prof thinks that it's quite an isolated case, and his perspective is different in terms of whether the glass is half full or half empty. What is yours as we wrap up this conversation? Hello, Professor Atintono. Kindly unmute your device, please.
Thank you very much. At least it's refreshing because Prof is our regulator, and we work together. The truth of the matter, we haven't denied that there's nothing on the ground. And I said we are happy that the new 300 bed capacity has started. But unfortunately, as I said, some colleges, they have not even been to the grounds. That's the contractor have never been there. And I'm happy sitting here listening to Prof saying that they have invited them for new talks. But the truth of it is, there are also other colleges where they have taken off. For example, if you come to Accra College of Education, where I sit, they have done up to the decking of the first phase, and the contractor is giving assurance that hopefully before the end of the year. A few other colleges have that, but quite a number of them, they have not even seen the contractor. And some, they went there and cleared the side they haven't. So I would rather say that from a GTEC end, they need to actually call these contractors and then give them a kind of a firm commitment to get back and do this construction. Otherwise, it's going to hurt us a lot. And I will still appeal to government and GTEC that the vote from GET Fund to the College of Education is so limited. We need to do more than what we are doing and give more priority to us. As we said, if we train the teacher, that's a critical factor in the education in terms of quality that we want. And we are committed to doing that as Preeclampsia. But we need that kind of support where we can actually train the best teacher for the country.
I appreciate your time, Prof. And we will keep our eyes on these projects, which are being estimated to be completed by, or projected to be completed by the middle of next year. We will keep our eyes on this. But let me say thank you to you all for joining us for this conversation. And hopefully we will have an extended one another time. This morning I've been joined by Professor Mohammed Salifu, Director General, Ghana Tertiary Education Commission, GTEC, Larry Agbado, Editor, Teacher Education Journal, Dr. Peter Anti, Executive Director of the Institute for Education Studies, and you just heard Professor Samuel Atintono, National President of Preeclampsia. Well, we will go and sip on some water. When we come back, we'll be talking about a very serious condition that affects pregnant women, preeclampsia. Do stay. Thank you so much for staying here on the AM show. I'm smiling because it's a good day to be alive, but the conversation I'm going to have is not one that's too exciting. We're going to be talking about preeclampsia. It's a pregnancy complication, and you may have heard the word just like me, but may not know too much about it. This morning I've been joined by Dr. Emmanuel Sropenyo. He is Medical Director at the Greater Accra Regional Hospital, aka RIDGE, and Koiwa Koi Labi is an Executive Director and Founder, Action on Preeclampsia Ghana. And she is a preeclampsia survivor. Is it okay to call you that? Yeah. And she's just going to be sharing her story with us. I'm happy that you're here, Doc, and I'm happy that you're also here, Koiwa. Before I come to you to share your story, Doc, what is preeclampsia? It's a word we hear all the time, but what exactly is it?
Thank you very much for having us here. Preeclampsia is a complication of pregnancy, and it's a condition which occurs during pregnancy where the blood pressure of the woman begins to rise. Normally, during the second half of the pregnancy, from 20 weeks going, her blood pressure begins to rise. And it's not only the blood pressure, other organ systems in the body begin to undergo certain changes, and eventually leading to the loss of the baby, the loss of the pregnancy, or certain complications for which the doctor may have to intervene to save the life of the woman. So that is preeclampsia.
What signals?
The signal sign is the hypertension.
What causes it?
So I wish I know the cause directly to tell you. We don't really know the cause, but we do know that it's related to the pregnancy, possibly the placenta. And so it looks like there is a reaction between the placenta and the system of the mother, for which that reaction, that is what leads to involvement of the other organs, derangement of the blood pressure and the other organs of the body.
Okay, and so it's preeclampsia. Would you classify a woman who already has hypertension before getting pregnant as being in that category, or it has to be a hypertension that is induced or triggered by the pregnancy before it's considered preeclampsia?
Thank you very much for that question. So this is how it works out. Women who have hypertension already before they embark on pregnancy are themselves at risk of developing preeclampsia. Preeclampsia goes beyond hypertension.
Great.
So they are at the risk of developing preeclampsia. So when that happens to them, we call it, we superimpose preeclampsia. You have hypertension already, and now preeclampsia is superimposed upon it. So that is how we call it. But you can have hypertension, and if preeclampsia does not occur, you can just go through the pregnancy with your hypertension throughout the pregnancy and deliver. but preeclampsia can be superimposed upon it. And hypertensives are at risk of developing superimposed preeclampsia.
Doc, I'll be back to find out from you what we can do, if there's anything any woman can do to prevent having preeclampsia, or it's written in the stars. Is there anybody who is more predisposed to it apart from those who already have hypertension? I'll come back to you for you to tell us that. But let me talk to Koiwa. Today is Preeclampsia Day, okay? And I'd like for you to tell me what your experience was like. How did you get to know that you had the condition? What did you go through, basically?
Thank you very much for having us here. So I'm a 4-time survivor of preeclampsia. There's actually a spectrum of it. There's preeclampsia, eclampsia, HELP syndrome. Out of 4 pregnancies, I've lost 3 babies. I have only 1 surviving child. That was in 2013 because I did 5 months antenatal here and then did the rest in the United States, where preeclampsia still set in, but then I was managed to 37 weeks and I had a baby and there was no NICU issues. But my first pregnancy, I was totally ignorant like you. I didn't know anything about it. So I went straight into the full spectrum, which is eclampsia. Eclampsia is a Greek meaning for lightning. So I was fitting like an somebody who has epilepsy.
Okay, like had seizures?
I had seizures, exactly. And then I was rushed to the hospital. Luckily, there was a night surgeon. And my ex-husband during that time called my mother, to name the crisis. And my mother was like, oh, Same Yariano. So you see, we knew that my mom had lost babies, but we didn't know it was because of preeclampsia. And she also didn't communicate it at that time.
It's familiar.
It's familiar. So in my case, my mom had it, but I was not hypertensive. Till date, I'm not hypertensive. Fast forward 2013, I had my baby in US. 2017, hey, I got pregnant again. I was like, Ghana must give me a baby. But sadly, it didn't happen. This time, always at 27 weeks, I get tired, fatigued, went to the hospital, BP reading around 150, 100. And then this time, the baby dies in my womb.
And the first time, how did you lose the child?
The first time, I was the same 27 weeks. I had just gone to like a meeting and then we just went home. I was complaining of headache. I was bloated and everything. And my ex-husband was like, let's get some rest. And then around 2 a.m., I just went into seizures. Right. And so they took me to the public hospital. They did a surgery, delivery. And then the baby came out but died after 7 days because he was less than 1 kg.
Okay, and I understand that's another feature of preeclampsia where the babies do not develop as they should.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right. So 3 babies you lost.
Yeah, it's been quite traumatic, having to, it's more like going on a journey and you come back with no result. It's not anything you wish for any woman at all. Today we are smiling, but we've cried a lot. And I guess that's
I'm so sorry, honestly, that you have to go through that. But Doc, she's just giving us a cue, the issue of family history. So for you mothers out there who have preeclampsia, please do well to tell your kids, obviously your female kids, when they're ready to have children, that this is what you suffered. There's a probability that they can have it too. But Doc, apart from having it in the family, what other conditions or situations can predispose a woman to it? And what are the signs? She had a seizure. I don't know if there was any signal her body was giving her that she could have taken a cue from early enough to avoid that seizure.
So first, let's talk about the risk factors. So one is familial. If your mother or your grandmother had it, there is a high chance that you could have it. One is those who have high BMI, that we can call it those who are a bit obese or overweight. They have higher risk. People who are carrying the first pregnancy. It's commoner in the first pregnancy than in subsequent pregnancies. And then those who have certain other disease, connective tissue disease or autoimmune, those are a bit listed. Those who have that condition also have a higher risk of it. Those who are already hypertensive, or we call them chronic hypertensive, they are hypertensive before they embark on pregnancy. And then those who are also diabetic, these are people who are at higher risk than the average normal people. But we do know that there are people that do not fall on any of this risk profile, and yet they get preeclampsia. And that is why we are saying that it is not everything that we know about this condition.
Still understanding it.
Yeah, we
We're
are
still
still
learning.
studying. We are still learning.
Right, so Doc, for women who are watching us who intend to get pregnant, and I always say that knowledge is important because you never know where you will be when someone who need that knowledge you have. So you may be in the office with another pregnant woman. So this is not a conversation exclusive to women. Men, you need to understand when your wife, your sister, your colleague gets pregnant and you begin to see certain signs, you know, you just want to prompt them. So Doc, let's zoom into that conversation because we're looking for solution, ways to help women, right?
Yeah.
So what are the cues that we should be looking at for? What are the signals our bodies will give us? Because, you know, sometimes the thing is that depending on where you do your antenatal, sometimes they say, oh, come in 2 weeks. You are fine today. You don't need to come every week. And who knows what could happen in the 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So what should we be looking out for?
So one of the things we should be looking out for, and she said it, that your face may become bloated, your legs may become swollen. That is what we call in medicine edema. Okay. And so when you see this becoming excessive, know that there is something happening and report to your midwife. Now every woman has a midwife, every pregnant woman has a midwife. Call your midwife to complain. Sometimes you may have headaches, persistent headaches, frontal, mostly frontal, and being persistent and severe. When you have that, report to your midwife. There are times that you begin to feel dizzy and have blurred vision. That is not something you should stay home with. You should again report to your midwife or call your doctor that this is what is happening to me. It may be a sign that you are about to undergo fitting so that you can be rushed to the hospital and then preventive medications can be given to you. But the point to make about preeclampsia is that largely, especially in the initial stages, it gives no signs and symptoms. And so we cannot say that, yes, we are waiting for signs and symptoms. One other sign is that sometimes when you are having a lot of proteins in the urine, it's one of the things that you see the
check
midwives
every morning,
every day when you go to the
yes.
Sometimes when you have proteins in your urine become more frothy. So like you go to the washroom and you pass urine,
bubbles.
It forms more bubbles than normal situation. That is something that pregnant women should be watching out for. When you are swollen in face and you go to pass urine and then you see that significantly, look, report to the hospital so that your midwife will check you. But the most important thing that I have to say, just to stress again, that it may not give you any sign or symptom at all. You will just be there, you go to the hospital, the midwife checks your blood pressure, and you say, my God, your blood pressure is very high. And then they check your urine, and there is proteins also in your urine.
So we should make it a habit of being, well, I don't know if you can afford a BP machine, Doc, and I don't know if you recommend that, but quite, and we're in the World Hypertensive Month, right? This is May,
also,
and there's a lot of
interesting that the two have come together.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there are people who are encouraged to, you know, just keep monitoring if you can, and you're taught how to do it. Is it something you would encourage?
Yes, I will seriously encourage that. We are now moving into that era where people have diabetes, they are able to check their own sugars every morning. And so the same way those who have hypertension, we are encouraging you. So for pregnant women, your ability to every morning check your blood pressure and know where the situation is so that in case there is any sudden change or sudden derangement, you can call your midwife or call your doctor and report to the hospital is the area to be going. But also another important thing that to stress, for these reasons, it's not good for pregnant women to just stay in the house to say that, oh, they are attempting to deliver by themselves. Gone are those days where women try to do home delivery or women get pregnant 7 months before they report to the hospital for the first time. Now the law from Ghana Health Service, that when you are pregnant, within the first 3 months, you have to report.
You have to visit.
That is the first trimester. When you report, your baseline blood pressure will be checked. If you are already hypertensive, then it is noted down. And then they know that, yes, this is a special care they have to provide for you. So that is one of the ways out.
And Koiwa, you have the last word because for me, I just, and that is a conversation for another day, Doc, and I'll catch up with you on that. On the reason why Koiwa had to go all the way to the US to have a child. I mean, I can imagine how much it cost you anyway, being there, having, I'm not sure you went on insurance, were you? So that's like cash, that's really expensive. But why does she need to go all the way to the US to have a child? That's a conversation for another day. But Koiwa, briefly in wrapping up, tell us about Action on Preeclampsia Ghana. Obviously, we know why you're doing this, but tell us more on what you plan to do with the work you're doing.
Thank you once again. I think Action on Preeclampsia Ghana, we've been there for 5 years now, and the main objective really has been to create education. And as Doc said, in addition to knowing all the risks, one of the things we encourage women is preconception care. People, while women should patronize preconception care, that way you have a discussion with your doctors ahead of time, where we get to know your risk, your history, and then we can prepare. The whole idea is preparing for this kind of condition. And so with our organization, it's basically education and awareness among the patient community and the health practitioners, as well as partnering with researchers to come up with projects that can deal with the menace and also the mental health bits, providing support for those who go through this. Because we live in a country or a situation, in a territory where you're expected to smile during the day and cry at night. Nobody sees you when you're crying. And so we work to provide support to those kind of people who go through this. And one of our key things that we keep as an advocacy organization is that you should know the symptoms, spread the word, and save a life. Know the symptoms, spread the word, and consult the health professional. So all the signs you see here is what Dr. Envision. The headache, that's where you take para, it doesn't go. The blurred vision, where you are seeing dots and you don't. I started wearing glasses after the first pregnancy because of preeclampsia. Where you are swollen, your hands and face is swollen, and everybody's telling you you're going to have a boy when you're actually sick and will die if you don't take care, among other things. So we are telling the women, be alert when you get pregnant. Honestly, we need to take charge of our health when we get pregnant, and our partners also need to be alert. That is why they must know the symptoms, spread the word, and save a life.
I like that. And right here on this show, we have shown you what the symptoms are. Please spread the word, share the link, share it to a friend, somebody. I'll have even in church, I'm sure if they call you, you can have you can do something with them, Action on Preeclampsia Ghana. On social media, they can find you.
We are the grandmothers, mothers, and people within the household, community leaders. They should preach the word. And when a young girl is pregnant in their vicinity, they should find out whether this young girl is attending antenatal and what the care plan for her is.
Thank you very much. Dr. Sropanyo is Medical Director at the Greater Accra Regional Hospital, aka RIDGE, and Koiwa Koila be doing a great work with the Action on Preeclampsia Ghana. You can find them on social media. You can invite her. She will give you all the necessary education, or she will facilitate that for you, whichever organization or groupings that you belong to. Now, we move on to our next conversation right after this. Wikimedians of Twi Language Communities, a young non-for-profit organization made up of a dedicated group of open advocates who work hand in hand with Wikimedia Foundation to increase the presence of information about Africa on the internet. Do stay for more. Thanks for hanging in there. Let's now talk about Wikimedians, yes, and it's related to Wikipedia. I'm sure you're familiar with that. But this morning we're talking about the presence of African content in Twi on social media. And I have been joined by two wonderful ladies who've been working on this project. Jemima Entry is team lead Wikimedians of Twi Language, and she's to my immediate left. And Yvonne Dako is Wikidata project lead Wikimedians of Twi Language. Good to have you, ladies. And I'm happy it's ladies who are spearheading this, and so it's exciting to see ladies in the fore. But you tell me, Jemima, what is Wikimedians of Twi Language about?
Okay, Wikimedians of Twi Language is a young not-for-profit organization made up of a dedicated group of open advocates who work hand in hand with Wikimedia Foundation to increase the presence of information about Africa and the world on the internet in the Twi language.
Okay, so what it means is that what if I Google anything, I should get a response in Twi?
Exactly, on Twi Wikipedia.
Interesting. And you're doing this with Wiki Africa Education, right?
Yes.
Okay, so it's one big umbrella that has all these subsets. Is that it?
Well, Wiki Africa Education is actually not our initiative.
Okay.
It's an initiative of Moleskine Foundation,
Okay.
which is an international non-governmental organization. And the whole aim of Wiki Africa Education is to take underrepresented languages on the internet and increase content in those languages.
Okay, so it's not just exclusive to Chi. There are other people in other parts of Africa that are doing.
Yes, exactly.
Exactly. All right. Okay. But there's also the Afro curation. What is that one as well?
So Afro curation was created under the Wiki Africa Education Initiative, and it's a whole cultural experience actually. And the aim is for participants to get inspired, get empowered, have knowledge about their own culture, and then be their own mouthpiece on the internet. So it's about we as Africans, basically, since we know ourselves the best, to be our own mouthpiece of the information that is going on the internet about us.
Okay, so this is content for Africans by Africans.
Exactly.
To the rest of the world.
Exactly.
I like that. I love it. So Afro curation has a sub-theme, which allows you to focus a bit more. What was that?
So the sub-theme for Ghana, actually, is redefining Africa from the perspectives of authors and musicians.
I like that. Yeah, because music is moving, interestingly, out of just entertainment to more of cultural representation, cultural advocacy, cultural marketing. And so, yeah, that's a very impressive one. So, Jemima, what are the main objectives of Afro curation?
Okay, so first of all, the main objective is to promote and preserve the African culture and also promote tourism as well. Then empower young Africans to tell their own story on the space of the internet in their local languages.
So there's a program you're organizing, right? You're bringing authors, musicians, people who are interested. I can create content for you, right?
Exactly.
Okay, but it has to be in Chi.
It's actually in more than just Chi. So we are having both Chi, which is Asante and Ekrapim Chi.
Okay.
We have Dagbani. Okay. We have Guren, More, and Eve.
Oh,
and
we have
Fanti.
Fanti.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
can maybe sit there. Okay, so there's Fanti, there's Eva.
There's Dagbani, there's Guren, there's More, there's
Okay, so eventually you keep spreading until you're able to cover all the languages.
Exactly.
Is that the dream?
Yes.
All right, so tell us more about this program you're organizing, which seeks to bring together young people, especially you're hoping to get to buy into the idea of creating the African content.
So the program actually is running across Africa.
Okay.
And we are having the Ghanaian version.
The Ghanaian version.
Yes, and we are so proud because it's the first Afro curation ever organized in Ghana. It's going to be a hybrid event, so it's an in-person event on KNUST campus in Kumasi, but then it's also going to be online, where we have our editors from across the country who are editing other languages to also join the event.
Okay, before I forget, how do we join online?
So we have our social media handles. So Facebook is Chi Wikipedia. On Instagram is Chi_Wikipedia. You can just follow us on any of those handles and then you'll get the information. During the event, the 3-day event, which is just this weekend, we'll be streaming live on YouTube.
Okay.
So you can follow us throughout.
Okay, so Chi Wikipedia
on Facebook
and Chi_Wikipedia on Instagram.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell us more about the partners, the universities that are part. You just mentioned KNUST.
Yes.
But are there more universities partnering? And if you can, while answering this, just tell us about the grand plan across Africa and who are organizing this.
Okay, so first of all, the main organizer for this Afro curation thing is Moleskine Foundation. And so they partner with a language community in Africa. So Ghana, like she said, this is our first time. They partnered with Wikimedians of Chi language. So we will be hosting this event in Ghana. And the host university is KNUST. But then we've collaborated with University of Education, Winneba, that's Akan Nzema Department.
Wonderful.
Ejumako campus.
Okay.
Then We have dignitaries too who will be coming for
Yeah. Who are they? Do you mind telling us?
Okay, so we have Professor Charles Ofosumafo, who is the provost for College of Humanities and Social Sciences. We have the head of department, Dr. Solace Youngson.
That's at KNUST.
KNUST.
Right.
The head of department for Language and Communication Sciences department. And then we have the director, the regional director for Center for National Culture. That's Ashanti Region, Kumasi. Then the head of department, Akan Nzema, University of Education, Winneba, Ejumako campus, Dr. Akwesi Adomako.
Right, okay. So the venue and time again, it's happening at KNUST, exactly
Yes,
where?
Exactly, Vindicate IDL Conference Center.
IDL Conference Center at
Yeah.
KNUST.
KNUST.
And it starts on Friday, runs through to Sunday. At what time?
8 a.m. to 4 p.m.
All right, so there'll be a lot of fun. Anytime young people meet, you know there's a lot of fun. So you make some time to join the Wikimedians of Chi language, even as they hope to inspire young people to create content for Africa by Africans. And thank you, ladies, for joining me this morning.
Thank you for having us.
But before I go, water is life. Awake is premium purified water treated through a strict purification process to ensure that every bottle on the market refreshes you better. There's the perfect size for all purposes, 330 ml and 500 ml bottles to fit your pockets and bags, 750 ml for the heavy drinkers and 1.5 liters for those who always want more. And 19-liter jar bottles are ideal for homes and offices. That's what you must do now. Just drink Awake purified drinking water wherever you go. Awake, one for life. Choose a bottle of Awake purified drinking water and get quality hydration. Awake purified drinking water, one for life. And we'd like to say thank you, Awake. Now remember that every bottle you buy, an amount is donated to the National Cardiothoracic Center. It's another quality product by Preeclampsia Company Limited. Here's a number to call if you want to make a bulk purchase, 02623512551, 02623512551. This advert is FDA approved. And before I go, a glorious happy birthday to Iman Amadou, medical law student at the University of Ghana. May Allah bless your new age. And happy birthday to Hajia Fauzia Karim, mother for all, kind-hearted, down-to-earth. This is from Abna Opokwa Ahrinye at Adum TV FM. She says she thanks God for your life. May the Lord continue to bless and grant you long life. She says she loves you so much. And Minaye Sapoma Aqua, you're 5 yesterday. Happy birthday to you from Mom and Dad, Joyce and Fee Aqua. They say they love you and pray for God's love, blessings, and protection over you. And all right, so Iman, we've wished you a happy birthday. Aisha wanted another one, but hey, more blessings to you and belated birthday wishes to you. Abna Efriye Ejewa, Abna Ejewa Efriye, that's the name. Happy birthday to you from Mom and all your friends at church. And that's how we end this edition of the AM show. Really packed show for you today, but all important information for you to digest. God willing, we are back again tomorrow morning with another exciting edition.